Welcome to Interdimensional Gummy Bear Podcast, where we like to have interesting conversations with interesting people. Today we have with us Mr. Austin Price with Revive and Thrive. It is a wellness business in Gulfport. It is amazing. It's beautiful. They have really some state of the art facilities and equipment, and the way he's organized it is beautiful. It's well trimmed out. It smells good. It looks good. It feels good. It's got amenities that aren't common and that are kind of really new but they're research based, and they're new in our culture and perspective, but they're really ancient things, right?
Right.
So, Austin Price.
Yeah, good to be here.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
Good to talk to you, bro.
yeah. It was nice kind of catching up with you the last few times we've talked and seeing kind of like-minded and kind of the areas that we're trying to outreach to people, similar missions.
Yeah.
Now we all kind of just met you,
Literally.
right?
Yeah, for sure. It's like this. It's kind of wild. This kind of spider web of people in this wellness industry or this self-care industry type of thing. And moving back here about a year and a half ago, it's kind of like it's neat to see people. There's a lot of people around here that are getting it. That are
Blowing
really
your mind a little bit.
trying to take care of themselves. I think it can be easy to say like, if I'm in my ruts or this or that, it's like, oh, no one, we're in the South or we're in Mississippi and no one's taking care of themselves. And it's like, you get out there and you start running groups and you start seeing weightlifting groups or fighter groups or all of these different like micro communities around here and start looking at it as a bigger picture. It's like, whoa,
Yeah.
there's some stuff going on here. And it was
Yeah.
just me that might have been like
Right.
isolating myself.
Our perspectives.
Type of
Yeah.
thing. And it's been neat to now start, getting to meet you and getting to meet other folks in the community. And it's really inspiring.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it is like microwebs and networks of things that are kind of right under our nose, and it shows us, like, being from the South, there's a lot of meat on the bone, you know. And yeah, trust me, I've been discouraged in having a more contemporary wellness related business and being in it for 10 years now. Yeah, you're coming to a place where I learned a lot of these things from the West Coast, from models that I saw bringing maybe what we consider more Eastern techniques and mindsets into Western practices, and the conservative nature of the South. And we have the highest obesity rates, some of the highest sedentary lifestyle rates in terms of the country. In a lot of these models you see on the West Coast, the way people utilize them, there's not a lot of sedentary and obese people. It's more active people that are managing their health and wellness, and they take a more proactive stance there, and also spend more of their money on that. And the data shows that they save way more money by doing that up front in terms of the prevention, instead of an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, or whatever, the
Yeah.
treatment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're spot on. And like, I think for me growing up, it was, you had your weightlifters and your athletes and your bodybuilders. And of course, we kind of migrated into CrossFit and some other things like that. And to me, that was what I just saw as an option type of thing. It was a different, like, in fact, and my brother, when we talked about it, it's like, man, I just always used to look at those gym folks as like kind of dumb or like this or that. And it's like, as time goes on, it's like, no, they're extremely smart. It was us that were being judgmental, or it was us that were not, getting into it at the time for, our own reasons. And then being able to have the privilege to travel and kind of get around the area. I was out in Lake Tahoe for 4 years, and I saw like, it opened my eyes up to like, there's other ways to live this life. Like, it doesn't have to be a set linear way or this or that. And there's people out there thriving in like so many different ways, whether they were skiers or snowboarders or mountain bike riders or runners, or just like, they were just kind of go-getters. It was like this different, like, when I grew up, it was, you worked hard all day to get home to like lay on the couch, or at least that was the like,
watch your show lineup.
yeah, right. It was that. It was routine. But then it was worked hard so you could get to the weekend, and it was then you're sitting around and then kind of uncomfortable because you don't know what to do. And I would choose to party or do other things.
Or
like
down
that.
here, you're drinking and you're eating, and the weekends are for that, right?
And then the loop started back over, and for me it was, I mean, that loop lasted for a really long time until I kind of see like, wait a minute. the birth of Revive and Thrive is like kind of a way of life. It's not as so much as like I got to get to this point for this point to happen. It's kind of finding that ebb and that flow to kind of get out there and like get after whatever it is. Whether part of our message is like whether you're getting the kids to school on time or you're training for a big event. It's like these services complement that lifestyle.
Right. Well, real quickly, I gave a little introduction for Revive and Thrive, but you give us what is Revive and Thrive?
Yeah, so Revive and Thrive is our mission is to not merely exist, but to thrive. From what I kind of touched on there, it's like for a long time I just felt like I needed to be somewhere else, that I was just kind of existing. There was an underlying, discontentment, really. So our mission is like finding that purpose, that purpose of not giving up. But where our services come in, it's like you said earlier, our services are really traditional therapies. A lot of things come over from Eastern culture and now get popularized. I mean, we're talking about hot air, cold water, and salt, and a lot of stillness with yourself, which we'll talk probably more about. That's like just as powerful as any of it. So Revive and Thrive, if you're sitting in a sauna, you're getting the benefits of stillness, alone time, that space to have that revive. And then at the same time, you're getting a sweat cardiovascular benefit. You're getting a, kind of a workout in a sense without putting the stress on your muscles or joints. So it's the bothness.
Right.
Like you're able to do both in that time to yourself to just sit there.
Yes.
What are some of the amenities you have?
Yeah. So what we're able to offer is we have 12 different rooms or suites. So we have 6 private sauna suites that are for 1 to 2 people. So this is privately bookable. Most of our experiences in the past, or at least mine, was like a gym sauna where you don't know if some kids are going to come in, or a sweaty. I saw my first naked guy in a in a gym growing up, and I've heard that story from a lot of people. Or people kind of come by and they go, "Is there anyone in that sauna?" And if there is, they'll leave.
That's right.
And so part of our model here is that you'll be able to book your own sauna, come in, out, say, "Hey, Robby, I see you're in sauna 5. Have a good time." Very seamless.
Right.
And then we've also got 2 cold plunge suites. We have a larger suite for 1 to 4, and a smaller one as well. So whether you're with a group of people or by yourself. Then we have 2 contrast therapy suites. A lot of people don't know about contrast therapy. I'm learning. It's like, what is contrast? And so that's the ability to go between a sauna and a cold plunge. So we're getting our hot and cold, baby. We're getting our temperature up, and then we're bringing it down. And so that increase in blood flow and circulation is what leads to like the laundry list of benefits that you'll see kind of marketed.
What's a vascular exercise? The smooth muscles in your arteries, they really are most responsive to hot and cold. And so all of our vasodilation and constriction is controlled by small muscles on our arteries that influence the size and flow, right? The pressure. So that's what's so valuable, is that it's a flush, right? So you're expanding and contracting, expanding and contracting, expanding and contracting. And the more cycles you do that, it is a vascular exercise.
Right.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, and like if you're already doing hard training or things like that, you're able to get that exercise without putting additional stress on. So if I go, bench press, do a hard workout or something, I don't want to do chest 2 days in a row. I don't want to do, legs 2 days in a row. But to be able to go use these services, you're getting that recovery of that blood and oxygen flow without putting the pressure on the joints.
That's right.
Pressure, on that muscle that's already there.
And the big issue with the way people conceptualize recovery and managing their bodies, it's a big misconception. A lot of really healthy people, really active people, is that we're thinking of things too segmentally and too compartmentalized in terms of our own body, like how we recover parts of the body, instead of really thinking about how the body treating the systemic inflammatory process. So like, even if it is your shoulder that's more inflamed, it still has to be systemically processed. Like, you can't like draw inflammation out of the shoulder by itself. Right. Like, it has to be drawn from the central processing of the lymphatics, which is actually your core compression and contraction, your respiration, your resting. It's what expands and contracts and puts tension and relaxation on the lymphatic system like a pump.
Yeah.
So breath work, cold, hot exchanges, all these modalities combined with just the breath work itself is the thing that you plug into anything that deals with inflammation or fascia, because fascial restrictions themselves can creates restrictions in areas for fluid. Now we have a fluid processing thing going on, right? So that's what's really cool about all these is they're addressing it from like a hormonal level, a biochemical level, which is really important. And then when you are doing these more systemic deals that deal with your whole body, you're getting just as fast of recovery as if you sit there and beat up your shoulder with a massage gun and do it. Like even doing those things and then backing it up with these modalities make everything just so much more efficient.
Absolutely. Any way we can kind of break that up and get that oxygen and blood flow, going. There's a lot of different ways to do that. I think with hot and cold, one things that barrier to entry is that you just sit there, you lay there, like there's not, as far as, like having some people have bad knee problems or they'll have, arthritis or this or that. And it's like, well, I can't go run or I can't go do some of these heavier workouts. And so like kind of segue into a little different topics, like it can be good for any person out there that's looking for those benefits, not even just
their metabolic benefits.
Exactly. And so I think that's part of what our, mission is that whatever you're doing outside of our doors, our purpose is really about that.
And let's not fail to mention these are some of the most researched modalities. And for instance, the sauna, there's lots of big studies out there with the use of sauna, and they've shown up to 60% reduction in general all-cause mortality for people that use the sauna 5 days per week.
Wild.
60% all-cause, and then it goes all the way down to 30% for people that were using it like once or twice a week, or maybe even once or twice a month. So it's dramatic. And then when you look at the growth hormone levels, even in elderly people, and you're looking at just reparative collagen-based processes that need to happen for the body to repair and recover itself. I think that has a lot to do with it. And then the fact that a lot of times most human problems, whether it's psychological, physical, it's a stuckness. We're stuck. Like I'm ruminating on some stuff, and now I'm depressed and anxious. There's something stuck. There's some adhesion, and there's something that's not moving well. There's a stuckness, right? And so heat itself, and then just being able to like simmer, in a sense, and tenderize, just like how does meat respond, right?
Yeah.
And then, just creating some plasticity that way and it would make sense to soften the soil for roots to grow. And guess what? That's how our nervous system, our blood vessels, all that stuff, it moves just like roots and just like tree branches. Like it's just the nature. We're nature.
Yeah, I've never heard that analogy, but it makes sense. I mean, if we can loosen that up, and we are just energy, just like anything else. And so, like, getting in that hot or cold exposure, it's doing it for us. Like we just
nature. Yeah.
It's
cool.
Yeah,
and then to talk about the salt.
Yeah, so we kind of so one side of our building is mostly all saunas and cold plunges, kind of our Thrive side, if you will, and our other side is kind of our Salt or our Revive side. So we have two different services over there. We've got a sensory deprivation suite, or also known as a float tank. Some people are used to that.
That thing's awesome. It's huge.
We're getting most of our, a lot of people have heard of saunas.
You can stand up in
plunges. It. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like the ones I've been in, you can't stand up in. That's a big one.
No pod. We're talking full suite. I mean, easily two people could lay. I mean, it's a mini pool.
I've been to New York. I've been to really, that was probably the pinnacle, but in DC. And I always try to find wellness businesses wherever I go. When I've been in California, I've been to acupuncture clinics and all kinds of stuff. I have the luxury of doing that for a living, right? Just exploring and getting to know things so I could know, and share. But so your facility is by far and above, and it's in the highest class of anything I've seen as far as wellness facilities, and the trim out and the attention to the baseboards and the caulking and the trim around the doors and all the little details. And I'm like, that's what, to me, people really appreciate that.
Yeah. We definitely put a lot of attention into those details. And I think at one point, our management group's talking about like, hey, do we really need to do this? And it was like, do we really need to like
go for it?
And like, well, yeah, I mean, we do, I mean, this is a modern twist on like these traditional therapies.
6 different types of wood.
Yeah, every one of our saunas has a different type of wood. So we've got magnolia, cedar, alder, aspen, hemlock. I mean, and it's cool because, it's like, all right, it's an experience too. So like, yeah, it's hot air. Yeah, it's cold water. And it's also cool as shit.
That's
It's kind of neat to go in there and, we all like showing our experiences and like, this and that and our friends. And it's fun. Like part of this too is like, do it on your own. Like you're planning for something. Also, like you don't have anything going on Friday night, get your buddies and come down here and let's all do a sauna cold plunge. Like let's get in the salt room and like
talk about the salt room. Nobody's ever seen a salt room.
Yeah. So salt, right? Back onto the salt room is our biggest room that we have. The entire floor is covered in salt. I mean, you've walked around and it's like the entire one full wall and entire half walls around are completely out of salt bricks.
Yeah. Translucent salt bricks.
Yeah.
They
have
just light.
Feels good when you walk in that room.
Yeah,
it's hard to explain. I will say the salt room is probably the most
in the air.
Biggest thing that's grown on me. Like I was kind of skeptical, right? Like I was a big sauna cold plunge guy, like and like oh, I don't know about this salt thing.
Yeah.
But, we also have like so that's all like nice aesthetically pleasing, but we have what's called a halogenerator. And what that does is it crushes up salt into microionized salt into the air, and so that's where the real science comes into it. So you're breathing in that salt through your 45-minute session. So it's clearing out mucus, your respiratory system, your sinuses. We're all familiar with salt scrubs. So instead of having to get some messy salt scrub and scrub it on and in the bath, you're still getting those same benefits on your skin. And the history behind it is in the 1800s, they found in Poland that the salt miners were like getting sick. Their sinuses were great. Like,
great immune systems.
They were like, what is going on? What are these miners? Like, why are these miners just like
meanwhile in America?
They're like,
in coal mines, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, coal miners are getting sick. Like it's the coal. Well, why are the salt miners not getting sick? It's the salt, And so they decided over there to kind of like, all right, how can we get this? Like kind of like with a lot of this, how can we get this to more people? So how can we get these benefits? So in doing that, there's a sales to it. Like let's create we can't create a mine. We can't, not everyone can come visit a mine. So how can we create something that people can come visit, And so that was the birth of these salt rooms. And they became popular in European culture, just like saunas and cold plunges have been around for thousands and thousands of years outside of Western culture. And a lot of this stuff is now migrating over here. And as we've seen in the last several years, I mean, this has been a trend to where we're picking up on it. A lot of the research is now backing it.
Sure.
Before it was like, what are these crazy people jumping in the cold water for? And they feel great. And like,
that's right.
They're just telling us they feel good, but we don't know why. Now the research, you've got Huberman out there talking about the studies behind, a lot of these.
Sure. And validating them and doing stringent scrutiny and review and purging the nonsense, because these aren't, and it's important to do that because you almost have to really walk into these things with the attitude of really being able to stand behind it because at the end of the day, people buy belief, and there's so many people out there pushing the narratives that are for profit and that really drive health disparities that we deal with, and capitalism has really been poisoned in a sense where they've basically poisoned us, and that's really what everybody is kind of waking up to. So I think it is important for people and I feel obligated to do everything I can to help you because this is about our people, our community, our culture, and changing these narratives where think about it like this. The biggest commodity everybody wants is energy, right? Everybody's looking for energy. The energy drink market's outrageous. You got all these people that are just dying to have more energy. And then it's like, this is where it comes from, the earth, from the salt, the electrolytes, which is actually the electricity the mineral that you need for your body to conduct electricity, for your nervous system and your brain and for your your muscles to work, right? And then now we're told that we need to be on low sodium diets and all this and that. Well, guess what? They're finding out that the people that are taking in and ingesting sodium and not poisoning themselves with these other things are the healthiest people,
Right.
right? And the people that are staying engaged with the minerals from the earth, whether it's magnesium, whether it's sodium, whether it's these essentials that are in us, within us, and necessary for us to thrive and function, right? Thrive.
Yeah.
But these are ways that this is energy. This is how you produce energy right here.
Right.
This is the answer. It's not in any other form than this. This is the most pure, natural source of energy there is. Right.
Yeah, there's no pill. There's no, things like, that you're being given. I mean, like we started off, the energy's in the earth. It's in us. It's around here. How do we cultivate that?
Yeah.
And,
how do we engage with it?
Yeah. There's multiple ways to do that. I mean, even the four that we have 4 services that we believe that definitely harness that, and it's like, all right, those are 4 that we're able to offer here. There's certainly other ways: connection, running, exercising.
Right.
This is just a complement to
and
that,
a bridge. It's a bridge, and like you said, it's a lifestyle.
Yeah.
And so, and I would truly believe in microdosing healthy physical inputs, right? So, like for a lot of what we do, there's a movement diet that I try to prescribe and offer people. Where, for instance, our warm up, there's about 5 key inputs that if you just get a couple minutes of every day. Once you understand what that means, so like rebounding, for instance, I could rebound on a trampoline, or I could just sit there and bounce like this, right? Or I can kind of go back and forth. There's a lot of ways you're trying to snap and connect with the fascia rebound, right?
For sure.
Of the fascia catching your body, and we talked about you do that when you run. There's ways of it's the same thing. You're engaging, you're connecting with that system, the suspension tensegrity system of our fascia. That's what it's there for. But the interesting thing about it is that it's a sensory device and a motor connection device, right? So it's a part of our nervous system, but it's also part of our connective tissue structure. And people try to communicate it like it's like cornstarch, where it's like fluid structure, but you hit it and it's like a brick.
Yeah.
But and it kind of melts with sustained pressure, right? So, and that's kind of why it responds so well to heat and things like that with the sauna. But the idea is that people need to understand this is the reality of our bodies. Everything that I've learned about what our bodies really are and what they really need were not taught to me in the conventional medical teachings, right? Or the doctoral physical therapy doctoral teachings. Most of what I've learned, that taught me how to think about and be critical of information and how to solve problems, right? And how to reduce bias and how to get to the point where I can trust my gut. But because until you can do all those other things, you really shouldn't be trusting your gut too much, if it's not based on real clean evidence, right?
Yeah.
But this is what my career and path has led me to and it's not I'm dismissive of the traditional institution in its ways, because it's like just like anything, there's levels.
For sure.
So you got to climb a ladder to get to a certain point. But where this thing goes, once you break convention, especially as a for-profit business, right? For Neolife, for instance, the stigma I had to break was that I'm breaking a referral-based system. All of the models of outpatient therapy that you could look at, they're all from agreements with doctors for referrals or attorneys for referrals or some kind of system that incentivizes prolonged inefficient care and service, not for the patient. So doing a business where it's basically saying like, I trust that if we do the best service for our patients and we give them the best experience possible, they're going to continue to tell their friends and family about us. And that's going to be my referral market, and bypass the traditional way of doing things because I don't want that on my heart, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I felt like everybody, I feel like that institutional standard is not the future. And so at some point somebody and people have to be willing to break free of the security of knowing that I could probably make that model work and figure out how to scheme it up like that too. But like, why? And do I want to carry that with me, knowing that I might have a boatload of money, but I don't have integrity of myself and be able to be proud of what I'm doing and what I'm passing down to my kids. So that's a part of with you starting your family.
Yeah.
I'm sure this is like,
Yeah, it's all just happening kind of. I think once you kind of like, or at least for me, like surrendering to this flow of life is like it just keeps coming at me, but in like such good ways.
you want to talk about your Appalachian Trail?
Yeah, so I mean, we can even like we've kind of opened up with about Revive and Thrive and like this business and like kind of where this.
That's what I'm here to hear. I want to hear about the man too.
Yeah, so I mean, we can talk about. I mean, like with any business, it just wasn't kind of a out of the blue kind of just idea. There's definitely some purpose behind it. And for growing up, I mean, my thing was money. I want to start a business. Like I want to be a millionaire by 30. Like it was that was the like. Like that was what made me successful, and I kind of chased that through. I got an accounting degree and worked as an accountant for a while, and then had the like, is this what I want to do, kind of thing. So I bought an RV and went out to California.
How long did you do accounting?
So I was at accounting firm here in Gulfport for almost 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So working on staff accounting, doing the books, mostly tax accounting.
What was your breaking point? Be honest.
I mean, I think the breaking point was probably self-indulging outside of work, type of thing.
Not feeling good.
Not feeling good, not taking care of myself, addiction, those kind of things. Then trying to like use work as like I'm an accountant type of thing. I mean, I even think
being productive and doing the responsible thing.
I'll party all night, but I'll show up at 5 a.m. so I can catch up from the stuff I missed the day before, and then then I'll go out and party. And even in a sense, it's like, I like the idea of saying I was an accountant. Like I liked being able to go out and say like, I was an accountant. Like people looked at me differently. They actually I wasn't even making that great of money, to be honest with you, but people thought I was. Like when they hear accountant, they're like, yeah, oh, you're here, like this is where you're at. And I lived that was my dopamine, rush for a while. The breaking points came from like that over and over again. And leaving the office I couldn't see straight because I was looking at a computer screen all day, and then seeing a path. I mean, I think it was the path that I could see for the next. And when that aha moment went off, like I've been doing this for almost 5 years, and like I was single, I was living, in an apartment, and it was like, is this like I just didn't have any purpose if we really want to go to it. I didn't have any like, my why had run its course. So like, you go to high school, you go to college, you get the salary job. How I got the salary job. Like I didn't have a driving. In fact, my purpose was always like what's out there, which is probably is a purpose. Like what is out there in the world?
Well, we set our benchmarks based off of what we've seen. And so I think that's just a part of the story we begin to tell when we're a kid, whenever we actually, we feel inadequate or we feel like and it was like, well, I could see models of labels and things like I want to be an orthodontist. Yeah. Mostly because when I went to more orthodontist, I was like, he's definitely got money. He got money. And he's got Game Boys at every single thing. I was like, so he's got to be rich. Yeah. Yeah. Because like my dentist doesn't have like actual Game Boy. I could play a game in the chair. Right. I was like, and every chair's got one. He's loaded. Yeah. Yeah. So that's where it started. I was like, I want to be orthodontist. Yeah. And literally I just never changed the channel because I was like, well, that'll get me at least to there. And I didn't really even contemplate it again until I graduated college. Yeah.
I believe that. We get so caught in it. We don't step like we go back to like that stillness thing. Like unless we're like whatever, we have some event happen in our life that throws us off our rocker, or we have some kind of stillness that we're able to sit with, or whatever it is. It can be a death in the family, it can be anything, it can be addiction, it can be losing a job, losing a spouse, losing a neighbor. Like it can be anything that goes, oh shit, what am I doing? Yeah, what existential crisis.
Well, too, I don't think until you feel the results of actually hitting the mark. Yeah, and then realizing that you maybe shot too low, and then having to stop and say, okay, well, what's next? Where's my next place? Like, what's the next thing? And I think that's the crisis And I think it's a part of when we're intended to have a rite of passage as a man, or we're intended to have of something where we feel the calling.
Yeah.
It's scary. It's like I don't have a clue what's there, and it's like petrifying to think about the fact that I'm about to like contemplate breaking free from this thing. What was that like?
Yeah.
What was that like?
I mean, it was pretty. I didn't know what I was doing, you know. I mean, so I was pretty terrifying.
So one day you just woke up and said, "Yeah, okay, I think I'm going to go
so
on a
what
pilgrimage."
it started is so you're so yeah, we'll fast forward. So I traveled out west, kind of did, you know, lived out there doing the ski bum lifestyle, like going from an accountant to like a, you know, let's just go out, you know.
So you
like,
left Gulfport.
So I left Gulfport and went out to lived in Lake Tahoe for about 4 years, and so working at restaurants, bartending, working at the ski resort, kind of doing seasonal kind of work. And I met a girl there, and then her and I lived on the coast of California for a little bit, still in the RV. Went up to Eugene, Oregon, and we were there during the pandemic. And believe it or not, I even, like, when we went to Oregon, got a job back with like an accounting staffing type firm. Kind of these loops, these patterns that will happen, like, oh, maybe I need to get back into that kind of thing. And so then the pandemic hit, and it was kind of blessing in disguise for me, because like, the job, you know, no one was working. And it was like, no, that really wasn't. Okay. That was just a little reminder, you know. Sure. You were doing, you know, just fine. So this is the big pilgrimage that I'm leading into was, I'd always wanted to hike the Appalachian Trail from a young age, growing up deer hunting, kind of spending time in nature. You know, in the back of my head was like, one day I'm going to hike the Appalachian Trail. One day, you know, one day I'm going to start my own business. So a lot of these one days I've, you know, had. But a lot of my big transformations came in taking the leap on that journey. And so before that was doing some hiking, guiding hiking and things like that in North Carolina. And then led to taking that leap, like downsizing everything to a backpack, and started. So if you're not familiar with the trail, it starts in Georgia and goes 2,200 miles all the way up to Maine. So I was able to start on April 8th and finish October 10th.
Wow.
So 2 days more than 6 months.
And that was in 2022?
That was in 2022. Yeah.
Wow.
2022. Yeah.
Dude, that's kind of one of the interesting things about the pandemic is now if you look at where business and technology and how people have in all these new creative ways of creating businesses and opportunities, it's really part of the suckiness of that pandemic and what it forced us into. It kind of made people break their shells a little bit, and their personas had to get shattered if they got laid off or furloughed, or, you know, they're stuck in their house and they're having to just figure out what to do with their time, or they have time to even think. Yeah. Instead of being driven down a corporate agenda. Yeah. You know, and so it's interesting to see how many people responded like you. And I think there are quite a few. There's more than I could say I remember from before.
For sure. In fact, like when I left Gulfport to go out to California and do the RV thing, if I'm honest, like I was still chasing something. You know, I lived the ski bum lifestyle, and I rode that ego, that identity of like, just as much as I rode it as being an accountant, I rode that identity as I'm not an accountant and I'm growing my hair out long and I'm going to learn, I'm going to be a ski bum and I'm going to, you know, and it was, don't get me wrong, awesome parts of it, you know, but like it was just as much of this, like I left Mississippi and blah, blah, blah. And so like that until like the pandemic hit, there was some stillness, and then really really did some deep work there afterwards. And then getting onto the Appalachian Trail, that was where a really big growth started happening. Because when one of the biggest blessings I got is like when you walk for that long, like what I started to realize is like I can't hurry to Maine. I can't get 2,200 miles in a day, or like I'd even like, and it took me months actually of going through like I'm trying to get here. I'm always trying to get here. And for my whole life, I was always trying to get there, wherever it was. Like, and I'd change it. I could change the people and places and things, but I was still trying to fulfill something inside that was probably there from like little kid of trying to like get a word in with my parents, or like, trying to like see me type of thing. And I tell you what, the longer I walked, the more I realized it's all made up. It's all made up. I'd walk and some layers would fall off, and all of a sudden I wasn't thinking about the things I used to think about. All of a sudden I was just there, like, and it like was just like some really aha moments of like one of the biggest things I got from the trail is hurry is a made up thing.
Mm.
And I get in and I'm always trying to be there. And I'll tell myself if I do have to get some things done, like I can move quickly, but not be in a hurry.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something I work on daily, and I have that time to reflect back on. But like I'll be trying to take a shower fast so I can get to something. And I'm like, this energy comes up, and I spill that into the people around me.
Mm-hmm.
They see that.
Mm-hmm.
And I know from like, even from a kid, it's like when someone's a hurry for your parent or a dad or a mom especially is like, come on, let's go. It's like as a kid, we feel that.
You're wiring them for that, yeah.
Nervous system was from a young age of like, and then I can look back on some of my childhood and realize like, I was always in a hurry.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know how to not be in a hurry.
Right.
And so it took really the trail that awakened me to like,
it humbled you.
I mean, like in some of those long days of hiking, it's like, I had to just like, I'll get where I'm going. I'll just walk.
How long do you think it took walking before that you kind of felt like where you really had a perceivable shift where you're like, wow, like I'm actually shedding some weird layers here?
Yeah. I wish I had like an actual moment. I really do. But I can think of times where it was like, a lot of people on the trail have these like rules of you can't stay in a hotel, or you can't do these things we're called blue blazes, which are just an off trail from the trail. And it's like, you can't do this and you can't do that. And it's like over time, I just realized that they're just all rules,
Mm-hmm.
And so like each time I would like feel an energy come up of like, I can't do that. Or like, so
you can do whatever you want.
You can do whatever you want.
You have pure choice and sovereignty. It's just you.
You can do whatever you want. And there's still that messaging around that like, you can't do this, or people say like, oh, it's not a real hike unless you do this, or it's like,
well, who's defining winning and losing?
Yeah,
it's you.
It's just me.
Yeah.
And so it's like I do think it was I'm just blessed that like I was able to have that time, because if I don't have that time, then I have so many things that distract me. And they're not bad distractions or good distractions. They're just distractions. Like whether, that's just waking up and kids, family, TV, phone, all of these things are like, if I just go from thing to thing to thing, I can never separate
That's right.
from it. And so like the hike and like,
where do I start and it begin? Like it really takes being alone sometimes to truly discern that. And I believe that. And that's why when you told me that you went on that trail, that pilgrimage, it was like, because I've done that in my own ways, and a lot of it by like when I went to school, straight out of high school, I went to a place where I didn't know anybody, and I was committed to going there because I had a scholarship to play football.
Yeah.
And I was nobody. The two coaches that recruited me there, the head coach and the linebacker coach, they were gone after my first year. And so then nobody even knew me, had even seen me. So I had to prove myself all over again, and then, but I was also away from everything that kept me upright prior. So emotionally, everything, like I had to really figure it out, and I had some support, and my grandma back home I could call and cry to every now and then, this and that. But that was really hard. And I also knew that I saw a lot of people quitting and transferring or doing something different. And I was just committed to following through with my word and what I said I was going to do. And I wasn't going to take the easy path. And I already knew I wasn't. And I was like, this is going to suck, but this is what's happening. And I'm whatever I got to do to get through it.
Did you think it was going to be as hard as it was going into that?
No, I didn't. You don't know. You never do. But what I did know is I knew my biggest gift was grit. Like, I just don't quit, and I'm very stubborn. And so I've just learned to channel that stubborn energy into being more of what we call grit, of like, I started seeing, like, whenever I said I'm going to be a orthodontist, I'm going to go pre-med, you know, and now I'm in like organic one and then chemistry and physics and all these hard classes. And I'm like, dude, I never really paid much attention in school, and I was always able to do pretty well, just kind of halfway in it. And so I just wasn't. It's boring, you know. It's just whatever. And so getting into there, I was like, man, I've already told all these people my whole life I'm going to be orthodontist,
Right.
and now they're back home, and I'm over here doing this. So I was like, I'm not coming back until I figure this shit out, because I done wrote a lot of checks,
Right.
and now I got to fulfill that. And I knew I had a instinct for manifestation, even as a youngster. We won a state championship my senior year of high school. I was a defensive team captain.
Yeah.
And so it's like I figured a lot out in that season in terms of just, you know, leadership and to be 17 years old and do that. And we had our whole coaching staff leave us our junior year, and then we won it the year after they left.
Wow.
So it was like
Yeah.
everything was against us. So it was like we had this huge moment as kids.
For sure.
And so I was like, I had so much confidence. Like, I can do anything, you know, because it was like this little, I guess it represented at that point in my life, from my perspective, it was like the Holy Grail. It was like the Super Bowl of what you can control at that point. Yeah. And then everything from there, from an athletic perspective, was a letdown. It was totally like a letdown.
Yeah.
So, and there was a lot of things where I thought that I was putting forth my best effort, and I wasn't. And there were times where I could say I was kind of on paper doing all the right things, but really not acting right and just not behaving right and in certain ways, and not really, and also being disconnected from a lot of positive influences that I grew up with. Like, there wasn't a secure base of that here at all. I had to fend for myself and figure that out in terms of what I surrounded myself with. And I had to make a lot of choices. I had to figure out how to, like, get myself fed and do my laundry. Like, I had to figure all that stuff out.
Yeah.
And dude, I was grandma's boy. It's like she took care of me, and I was well cared for as a kid. And so, but I also knew that wasn't I had to figure it out. And I didn't have a problem with that at all. But so I had to sort it out. But that was it. That was my little journey. So I was there for 4 years, and then I came home. I went to Southern for a year because I was like, I want to be a student. I want to, like, party and do all these things that my friends are doing. And I went to Southern, and I finished up my stuff there. I only had one semester left, but I went ahead and did a whole year at Southern. And then I took a full year off, and I moved back home. And that's where I was really just trying to sort out what's next. And so I took a job at eFitness doing fitness consulting, like $8 an hour. They just opened brand new multi-million-dollar facility and all this stuff. I was like, I just want to be around this stuff. It looks cool. And then I started training kids. I had a sports performance, speed and agility school called Rock Speed School. And it was just literally started with me going to some baseball games and, like, sitting on the benches and, like, listening and seeing which parents really were, like, interested in what their kids were doing, and then just kind of seeing what's going on. And then just, hey, you know, I'm a trainer and I work with kids, and I went and bought some ladders and cones, and I got a couple parents that I recruited from those games, and I would just do like $20 a head per session. They would just give me cash.
Total grassroots out
Oh,
there.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so I had, like, Wednesday for 2 hours and Saturday for 2 hours, and I was just trying to build it as like a group class. Before you know it, the kids' friends and the next people, and so I had 10 kids in the class, and then the moms were like, hey, what would you think about doing the same kind of, like, modified class for us after? And so next thing you know, I got a group of 10 moms. Yeah. And it was like 2 hours here, and then Saturday for 2 hours, and I was like, I'm making more money in 4 hours than I am working all the personal training. And then I was doing construction, working for my dad. So at 7:30 every morning, I was working on some job site doing some, like, hard manual labor, and then I would leave at, like, around lunch, and I went to the high school. I was volunteer coaching at the high school at the same time. And so that was 2008. That team that I was volunteer coaching on, helping with the linebackers, went to state. The Iberville team that goes all the way to state, and they ended up losing the state championship. But so I was there from 1 to 3 after for practice, and then I would go personal training at eFitness from 3 o'clock and sometimes till 10. And so it was literally that. That was like that whole season in my life. And I never remember being tired. I always just remember being like, this is cool. Like I'm getting to do all this different stuff and it's all temporary. And it's like, this is all going to be, it's just a season. And so I'm in it. Cause I remember thinking like, man, I just put in 13 hours today and like, I'm not tired. That's so weird. Like
you
I
didn't
remember
have to plan any of it. Or it was like you were just following each
was just-
thing. So then all of
yeah.
a sudden something that was 4 hours now is 10 hours, and it wasn't something you like. Wasn't like someone said, "Hey, you're going to work from this time to this time." It was like you were following that lead.
And I was getting a lot of variety and stuff. I guess that was good. And then, but also I was doing everything I could to get into PT school.
Mm-hmm.
So I got like 5 applications going at all these different schools, and I'm such a slacker at this point. And also not following through with some of the details of the prerequisites, because you have to have like sociology or some weird requirement that has nothing to do with it. Like, and so I only ended up having one application that was 100% complete, and it was with University of Mississippi Medical Center, and that was the one I really wanted. That's the one I was really shooting for, and I wanted to get anyway. So I was like, screw it. I got all my eggs in that basket. And then I started making trips up to Jackson to meet with the pre-admissions advisor, Joy Kubler, and she would walk me through. Like I would show her all my stuff and just trying to make sure my application was in good order. And so she reviewed my my GPA, and she was like, "You're shy on your core GPA. You only have like a 2.97. Well, you need a 3.0." And there was only like a couple weeks left. Or like a month or 2 left before the applications were due. So I had to jump into like a mini session at Gulf Coast, like a 2-week mini session, and retake some, like, I think it might have been like speech or some crap I had to see in and I can't even remember what it was. It might have been like an intro level biology or something.
Right.
Something that I made a B in, and then I had to get an A to bring it up. Anyway, and so, but if I wouldn't have went up there and put in those extra steps, I would have completely missed on that cycle. And believe it or not, at that time in my head, I was like, I told myself that if I didn't get into PT school that year, I was going to put all my efforts into becoming a professional fighter.
Okay. I was going to ask what you're like, because all that's going on. You've got the school thing. Like, what's your, you said you have a lot of energy. But at that time, was it to be a physical therapist? That was probably, I'm guessing, like the background. That was like you had all these other things going on, but that was the main like.
Well, that's what changed, because I was like, I already did my dental school acceptance test. I'd already went to some of the dental schools prior to this. I left that out.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I went and shadowed 2 dentists, and both of them, I was like, this job sucks.
Right.
I was sitting there and watching, and I was like, I don't really want to become like them.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't really like who they are, and I didn't really like the setup. It just seemed like it was just what didn't fit me. It was like, I don't care if they make money, this isn't me.
Right.
And that's really what got me pushing into the training and into other stuff, because I was like, this fits me. Like, I'm really good at this, and like I enjoy it. I probably would have been a coach if they made money, but that was kind of the deal. And so I guess by the time I got to that point, I knew what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to get a doctorate in physical therapy, because after working with the athletes and everything, I was like, you know what? Like, for me to be, I feel like that's the highest level of education and understanding in terms of the human body and human mechanics and all in movement. So that was the thing I was shooting for. And also after football, I went through an identity crisis. I was a little depression, because I was just like, well, who am I? I was like, I'm not relevant or important anymore, because I come home and people don't we used to talk about how's football going, and now I'm like, nobody.
Yeah.
I'm nobody, and I don't even know who I am, because I haven't tried anything else.
Right.
I haven't explored anything else, and so I was very shallow, and I knew that. And so I immediately started trying to become deeper, I guess. I started doing ceramics my last semester and I started doing just different. I was like, oh, I'm artistic. I enjoy that. I'm creative. I like doing pottery. I like doing I like flowers.
Yeah.
I like horticulture.
I didn't know that a lot. I mean,
Yeah,
I do.
I'm
I
like,
tried.
this is
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
All this stuff, like, but so I didn't know anything. I realized too, you don't know who you are. You just know who you're not.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to constantly pursue who you are and don't assume you know. Like, and you don't know until you put yourself into certain experiences and you really enough to where you can truly understand things and know, not just from a surface level. And in a lot of what we're talking about and I think you being a high school golfer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And,
Yep.
you had a lot of success in that. And so you probably built a lot of confidence in that season. And just like me at some point said like, okay, well, this is all ending. What thing do I feel like I need now? And it's usually a label. And for you, it was accounting. For me, it was a doctor of physical therapy. I was like, once I have that, I'm relevant.
Right.
I'm like, and also I can make up for what I felt like I didn't do in my athletic. I felt like my athletic career, I wasn't proud with. I never met the expectations I placed on myself. I was supposed to be an SEC linebacker. I was supposed to like be an NFL prospect, you know, and I really thought I was. And who knows, in another circumstance or another form of, you know, way opportunities and things happen, you know, I might not have been necessarily lying to myself, but I would, who knows? But also, who cares?
Yeah.
Like, and that's kind of a part of the cycle of like dropping the expectations that you place on yourself and being open to see what God really has in front of you. And for me, I've learned that this path and what's gotten me here is really all the pain and all the loss and all the times that I was upset and not feeling good about myself. Those were all necessary. Like I needed to experience everything that I felt to know and to be who I am today, you know.
You nailed it. I mean, like I was thinking, you know, for like on what have I learned through some of these journeys and, you know, experiences, and like, you know, in those times where I just know I wanted to do something but didn't know what it was. I think like first, it doesn't always matter what it is, just pick something. And I had to pick all the things that I did to get to my awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I can't tell someone like, oh, you don't need to go do anything or attach yourself to identities. Go do it.
Mm-hmm.
Go find those identities. Go be an accountant. Go be a hiker. Go be whatever it is that you think you're supposed to be to then realize that it doesn't matter.
That's right.
But like, it can't, like, in my experience, I couldn't go tell my 22-year-old self what I'm saying now and me go, I had to go
do it.
I literally had to get in an RV and go, and I had to mess up, and I had to, you know, get a DUI, and I had to, you know, do this and do that. And like, and for me, I had to walk a really long ass way, you know, like to realize like, oh shit, you know, like none of those things were who I was, but I would have never gotten there unless I chose those identities, unless I did attach.
That's
to
right.
it and did get miserable and
you
did
had,
suffer.
And
like,
you courageously went after some things, and that's the core drive, the grit to say like, I'm not going to just give up at the first sign of like not feeling great, you know, to endure. I'm sure there was plenty of times in that 6 months on that trail where you were like, dude, I'm just going to cut it short and go home. This is
totally. In fact, it's funny you mentioned that when we were talking earlier about like different phases of the hike. One of the sneakiest things that happened was after the halfway point. So we've still got 1,000 miles left. I was like, I've made it. I've learned everything I need to know. I had this thing. I was like, I'm going to go back home and I want to tell people about all this spiritual awakening I've had. And I want to tell them about like this place I'm in, you know? And then all of a sudden it was like, no, you chose to finish this thing. And in the beginning I said, I don't have a why. I just know that if I walk from all the way, I'll figure out the why. And sure enough, I learned more in that next 1,000 miles than I could have ever known. And that was where the not hurrying, the like slowing down, the like letting go is where I met Samantha, my girlfriend, in Vermont. We now have a 11-month-old. So all of those things wouldn't have happened. It's where all of a sudden I had this voice, this intuition that told me, you need to go home. And not to go home and tell everybody what you've done or this or that. It was like, and I'd walk another month and this voice kept saying, you got to go home. And like, I've been running away for 10 years. So like, you know, and I'd tell like, I'm never going back to Mississippi or something. And I didn't know why. Like, I'm telling me, like, I'd walk another month and it'd say, like, Austin, you gotta go home. There's unfinished business there. Like, you ran away from some things. You ran away from, like, dealing more with your family, dealing more with some friends. And, like, there's a lot of things, you know, that from, like, I was easier to leave. So, you know, my mom, dad retiring, getting into that age group, lots of things. This is before finding out we were pregnant. Like, so this is like all just an internal, this is before I even met her. And so lo and behold, I meet her, we have a baby, we come back here, and now, you know, get a personal trainer certification, leads into like training for marathons and doing sauna, cold plunge. All of these things just keep happening to say, this is why you were supposed to come back home. Like, they're all reasons. This podcast, whatever comes from like people experience and revive and thrive.
That's right.
For the duration of this time is the why. And I would
And
say,
what was the resistance to, like, because you said originally whenever you felt that intuition and that call, there was a lot of resistance.
Yeah, and I still will, like, I'll talk to him and say, like I'd still even say now, like, I don't want to be here all the time, but I know that I'm supposed to be.
Right.
Like, in fact, if there's a biggest difference between, and I was talking to Samantha about this the other day, if there's one big difference between my life now than when I was 25 or even 30, it's that I always thought I was supposed to be somewhere else, and now I know I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Now, I don't always want to be there. Like, I mean,
Sure.
I'm not immune to, like, frustration. I'm not immune to, like, is this really worth it? I'm not immune to when I get into a fight with my brother or my mom or something, or like, people are difficult. People are, they're, because we don't know what to expect with people's emotions and feelings and like life histories, and like, it's messy. It's messy building a team. It's messy, like, you know, learning all of these things that I have, you know, I'm just winging it with that, like, knowing that mission and underlying value. But I don't question, like, I don't think I'm supposed to be out in Colorado. I don't think I'm supposed to be like, the grass is greener. Like, or what if I went out and did this? Now, granted, I had to do all of that. I did have to go visit all of those places to get to this point. But that is by far the biggest difference now. And I found that in stillness. I found that in alone time. You know, I found that in like listening to that voice. Like, one thing, I had a prayer over a fire out in the woods one time, and it was like, just grant me like the wisdom to know the difference between want and intuition. And that's something I think about a lot, because just because I want to do something, or like I want to go like party, or I want to like, you know, I think it was like Viktor Frankl, or, you know, somebody said, like, you know, the man that lacks purpose will distract himself with pleasures.
That's right. Well, we think about it as pacifications, just like a baby sticks their thumb in their mouth to feel better in a moment of emotional discomfort, or ways it, well, then that turns into food, right, for adults, and even from kids, it turns into emotional pacification. Bad habits of any kind, whether every bad habit or vice is actually some form of pacification or comfort seeking. And so the discernment is really to know which discomfort is okay to endure, and also just the awareness to notice your urges. And that way, you know that you're having a purposeful direction, like assertive action in your life, and not all your movements being dictated by the need to comfort yourself, because you can't have purpose yet be comfortable all the time, because they're, like you said, one's intuition and it's more God-filled and spiritually connected, and the other one is rooted to our physical body and its needs and desires, and it's mostly driven by urges, the urges to eat, the urges to procreate, the urges to be relevant in a social structure, like 100%. In a sense, like we're not much different than apes in terms of our need for the social interaction and community. Like, you aren't going to see many apes that live alone, right? Because it's not a part of it's a part of their requirements, their health requirements. We need each other. We're social creatures, and we have to have relationships. And like you said, some of those relationships are like, damn, like it was kind of makes you want to go do the Appalachian Trail and get away from it. But then being away from it, I'm sure you really also saw all the positives. Whereas when you were in, didn't have a lot of choice, you were just stuck with the negatives that that you were focusing on. But then you start realizing, wow, like as bad, as annoying as brother is, like he really loves me and he's actually looking out for my best interest. And what's his motivation outside of what's good for me? He doesn't want what's bad for me. So it's like, it was love. It was
Right.
love. Like he actually was love. These people love me and they're scared of me getting hurt and they're scared of me failing. And so it's not a bad thing. It's that I just need to see it for what it is and realize that that's their way of expressing it. But you can't see that when you're in the middle of it.
No,
You
no,
know?
you can't. I mean, we were talking the other day about like I was opening up to you a little bit about like when someone gives me an opinion about. So we're building this business, right? There's tile colors, there's like cold plunges, brands, or this and that. And I've got these big visions and these ideas, and then someone comes in and says, "Well, what about doing it this way?" And my ego gets hit immediately,
Mhm.
And I'm like, ooh, why can't you just see it the way I see, or
The
like,
accountant came out.
yeah, just like, oh, I've thought more about this than you have, and like,
Right,
and
right.
this and that. And it's like to this thing's like that person's trying to help.
That's right.
They care enough to give their opinion. So I'm talking to my brother about, it, and like we've grown a little bit in this, thing, and it's like, no, anyone that's given their opinion cares.
They're putting in some kind of energy. Yeah.
So if I shoot that person down, then they're going to be afraid that I'm going to get upset in the future, and it's just going to be this conflict, and we're creating this energy that's going to be between us anytime we're around now,
Right.
and it's on me. It's not on me to tell them that they shouldn't give their or whatever it is or get upset. It's on me to realize like, oh shit,
It's not personal.
it's not-
They're not trying to, they're literally just telling you what they're thinking. And you're asking them for that as well. And it's a gift. But that's what I told you originally about how Neolife, and this is what your business will do, because it's not about you at all. You're in charge of it being successful in managing that brand and making sure you put it in the best position to succeed. And your wife, your kids, all your employees, your family, your brother, that all these people that are putting energy into this, well, at the end of the day, it stops with you. So it's like you have to put yourself aside and we have to put ourselves aside and put what's best for this brand. It's not always what's best for me and you. It doesn't always feel best for me and you either.
Yeah.
And but that's a true growth. That's true growth. And I would have never been able to feel like that's my reality. I would never have guessed I could be this person. Am I ever? Like as a kid, no. Like
Yeah.
I would have never in my wildest dreams guessed I would have the tolerance to actually emotionally feel balanced and like I could truly process these things you're talking about and disassociate from my feelings for something bigger, But sometimes if you don't, and they always say purpose and sacrifice, yourself for something bigger. The problem is most people's the bigger thing. It's not real.
Yeah.
It's not rooted in something that's meaningful and really worthy of dedicating your life to it, So if this was Austin Price's recovery center,
Yeah.
it would be tough for you to really push this thing far,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It being Revive and Thrive and Austin's this thing that's just underneath it, kind of moving it to where it needs to be for it to serve the purpose of changing lives.
Yeah.
Sure. And you getting to witness it.
Yeah.
That's the beautiful life.
That's the underlying mission. I mean, it really, is that what we talked about at the very beginning is it's a way of life. It's that Revive and Thrive will mean a little bit different for some, like how that operates in our systems, type of thing. But if, we can just start thinking about it a little differently, like the opinions thing. Like if I can look at someone and say they're just trying to help, if I can just trigger that to start looking at that, because for one, a lot of times their opinions are good, and it's like, okay, we need to use that, or back to our services, like a lot of the cold plunge and sauna, thing is like when you go and you sit in cold water, there's a moment where you're going to want to get out.
Yeah.
And you don't, or you may not, or you may
You
stay
endure a little longer.
a little bit further. Like even if it's just 10 seconds further, you're like, you know, you talked about like you built that confidence, right? Like you built that
Willpower.
confidence to go in to like chase the, you know, or to go after the physical doctor to physical therapy. It's like, all right, as soon as that trigger goes from, well, I'm going to get in for 10 seconds and then now I stay for 30. And we talked about the other day, it's a wild thing that happens, but that stress adaptation that you're building up, but also a confidence that next time I walk by the sink full of dishes, and I say, I'm not going to do those dishes. And sure enough, I walk 5 more steps and I go, oh, bitch, I got to go do those dishes.
Because I didn't want to.
Because bam. I mean, and it happened. It's like, I've seen it happen to me, and it's like, I don't have to like have this conversation with everyone, but I know that like, what happens when we sit in that cold water. Even same thing in a sauna. It's like, you know, I go in there and I'm ready, excited to get in that sauna, and then all of a sudden I'm sitting in a room by myself and I'm like, oh, what do I do now? And then you get hot, and then you're like, oh shoot, now I just need to stay in here a little longer. And it's like, oh, I've been in here 10 minutes and now I'm really hot because, you know, and it's like, well, maybe I can stay in here 15, and that's the magic.
So from my experience,
you know,
and
from
this
the mental
is
aspect,
100%. From my experience and also talking and reflecting with the fighters, because we all kind of do this wild stuff together.
Yeah.
It looks, for us, it's all kind of normal, but I know it kind of looks weird from the outside, but where the sweat tent stuff and in the contrast therapies and different things, but it's all evidence based and rooted in research. This is my profession, but a part of what's effective in changing the brain and the nervous system is a couple things. One is not taking things so seriously, gamification, playful attitudes. Kids' nervous systems and brain change faster than anything. And so adults that can utilize some of the same principles can gain those same benefits, right? So it is important to maintain a childlike attitude about hard things or about challenging things or about these things we're talking about. And also and talk about it as it's fun, and it is, yeah, they're hard things, but also thinking about like really focusing on the outcomes we're creating. And some of those outcomes are immediate and real, and you get out of that cold plunge, your endorphins, your dopamine, measurable changes, right?
Yeah.
And you feel like alive, right? That's but it's also just like I said, that heroin addict, that first hit is always the one they're chasing. It's the best part.
Yeah.
And so now when you practice these things for years, and now the meaning changes, but you're a different vessel. You've literally changed your brain, and you're changing even your potential. You're moving the needle for what your long-term potential is. You're changing your physical structure. And proof of that is talking about willpower. Your anterior cingulate gyrus, which is a kind of a section of your brain beneath your cortex and above your midbrain, it's right here in the front, right here in the frontal part of the brain. And it is, when you do something that you don't want to do, it grows. And they call it the source it's the structure of willpower, or the source of willpower in your brain. But they show a hypertrophy of this structure every time that you do something you don't want to do hard. So if I'm going to go run, I don't want to go running today, and you do it.
It
grows,
activates that. It's
right?
fascinating.
It's your center for willpower. They're hypothesizing. And he spoke about this, Andrew Huberman, when he was speaking with David Goggins.
I saw that, yeah.
David Goggins almost got teary-eyed because he's like, I knew this was real. I tell people that in my message, this is like, I've been trying to say this for years.
There it is. Yeah.
He's like,
Looked at me like I was crazy.
Validated, yeah. But then Andrew Huberman was really discussing the literature and showing that inversely, when you procrastinate and you walk by those dishes that you said, I need to do it, I don't feel like it, okay, I'm gonna go sit on the couch and eat chips, I'll do it in an hour, like that idea, it actually atrophies,
right?
And so in every moment of every day, you're either shrinking or growing this aspect of your willpower. And so if you're going to compromise it on small things, and that's why I think small things are the key. Because you have more influence and control over small things than you do over large things. So it makes total sense to go ahead and approach the small things relentlessly and get weird a little bit with bit, because when you identify you need to do something in your environment that only you know, nobody. But if you're also only living to for the appearance of everybody else, then you're already in the wrong mind frame to really maximize your growth and potential. So I feel like, just like we're saying, functional lifestyle and living in that way, it's about your mindset and it starts with your mindset and how you think. These tools and modalities a lot of times help people confront that, right? And gain some of that time with stillness with yourself. Eventually, you said, like, the layers start to dissolve and you start to find wisdom and truth. But I saw this great analogy the other day where it had a bunch of dots on a paper, and it said information. Each dot's a bit of information, right? And then next to it, it had the dots that were connected by lines, but it was still kind of haphazard. And it said knowledge. So you got information, knowledge. And then the next slide, it had all the dots and lines that were oriented into the shape of a lotus flower. And it said wisdom.
Yeah.
And it showed you the evolution from information, from knowledge to wisdom. When you hit the halfway point on that Appalachian Trail, you were full of knowledge.
Yeah.
So all this information that was just like random dots, all of a sudden you just connected all these dots. But at the time, you got a bag full of knowledge. So you're like, I need to go offload this thing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But then there was a part of you that said, no, there's this other thing that you don't even know about yet. And it's all involved with your finishing and doing what you set out to do. Because that's the thing you're not going to forgive yourself for when you're 90 sitting on the front porch.
True.
That's the thing that you're going to be regretting on your deathbed. And there's a part of you that knew that and said, finish. And now what you come back with is the lotus flower of revive and thrive in this beautiful mission, in this clarity of purpose, right?
Yeah. That's perfect. I mean, that's a wonderful way to kind of like tie it all together.
Cool,
and what better way to throw a lotus flower in? No, seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, that really is like a good way of looking at that journey, type of thing.
And it's for all of us. And I think the testament for whether it's my story, whether it's your story, whether it's anybody, any individual out there that's willing to be vulnerable and courageous and to share their weakness and their testimony and their failures and the parts of them that were disgusting even to themselves and they regret so much. It's like all that stuff is your power. It's your story. It's beautiful. It's a part of that lotus flower. All the disgusting things and labels that you running from, it's all like, it's just that simple of like, let yourself finish and go through this natural process. And a part of, I feel like, every man's natural process from transcending from boyhood into manhood is in ancient history was a rite of passage. And that was woven into the culture, into the society. Our culture and society don't profit off of that as much. So, when you think about the way we've been institutionalized as a culture for the last 100 years, it's been based off of the school systems. Everything is all about creating a compliant workforce, right? That listen and do what they're told. They're good boy little accountants, and they do their spreadsheets and they get their TPS reports in on time, and they go home and shut up. And they show up on time.
It's true,
And that's really it. Unfortunately, that's just the nature of the way we've been all indoctrinated to accept that, right? And some of it now, it's like, well, what happens if I'm in the middle of that now? What do you tell that person?
I was thinking like, what do because we were talking about earlier, like I had to go through all that stuff. Like I had to go, you had to go through your story. And it's like if someone's listening now, going like just like what you said, like where do I start? Like I don't know what to do. Where do I start? I think back on what you said about like I'm not an artist or I'm not this or I'm not that. It's like, well, there's something in, try something, anything, and then I think on a smaller level. Pick a marathon. It doesn't have to be a physical app. Like, do anything. That's
Schedule
not
an
what
appointment with Revive.
Yeah, come to Revive and Thrive. Sit in the sauna or let the cold water do. It's like, if that's intriguing to you and that's like, well, maybe that's what I need to be doing. It's like, do anything but what you're doing now, if that's what's causing you, and you'll learn something. On a smaller level, it's like, I was thinking, well, where do I start? It's like every time you don't want to do something, like every day we're given a beautiful learning experience. Like every day I get like there's things I don't notice because I'm not like some completely aware person, but every day there's something where I'm like, oh, there you are. There you are. I don't want to do this, or like I'm getting my kid out of the car seat, and all of a sudden I can't get his thing undone, and I'm like, oh, and I'm like, oh, whoa, I thought I was
Now's the
Mr.
time.
Zen, or
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
Of course,
yeah.
and then that too is like owning a wellness studio. It's like you got to be about it. Like I can't talk about this stuff and like not at least be somewhat of a pleasant person to be
Sure.
around, and at the same time, like
Not be a guru either.
I can't.
Like I'm not the healer. You still got to do it.
And I'm going through the same shit that I'm talking to
right.
you about. So, like, what's your feel? Like, I'm going through that daily. I have a pessimistic voice that won't shut up.
That's right.
A lot of times, and it drives me crazy. What I've learned to do, or learning, is this like, go, okay, I hear that voice. I'm not that voice.
No.
And if I can take
The monkey
any
mind.
type of stillness, like in stillness and in breathing, is where we have a chance
To change.
to sit there and go, oh, I'm not that voice. Like, and whether that's in a sauna or a cold plunge or a salt room or a sensory deprivation tank or walking in the woods, like that's the ideas to like come. These services are here to like separate us from that voice, and at the same time get a physical workout out of it, right? Like there's a physicality. I mean, a lot of what I'm talking right now is a mental, but like the Revive Thrive thing is the balance between mental and physical.
This is a great segue into
it's
like
a way of life.
This is such a big point in terms of like, I'd say a big part of our core philosophy or my core belief in really what I'm trying to push into everything that I influence is that mind, body, and spirit is not just a fun thing to say, but everything we do should be considering those key tenets. And what you do with your body is a mechanism to enhance your mind. Your mind is a mechanism to enhance your spirit, and vice versa, right? It goes all directions. So everything that you do spiritually, if you notice and practice, is a physical. Like if you look at Muslims and their prayers or rituals, it's a full spectrum of motion, right? Their body has an expression of motion, right? If you look at even Catholic churches, right? Like you stand up, you kneel at the altar, you sit down. It's like these movement things that are associated with this spiritual thing, right?
Yeah.
So technically, it's like you're doing a little form of a workout in a sense. Like you're moving.
You're getting that blood and oxygen
just
flow
sitting
without
there.
even realizing that maybe that's like where some of that stuff.
It's actually
a subjective experience from it, and it was like, oh, it works. We should do, and then like it becomes part of it.
And then people see yoga, and it's been demonized because it has been attached to blended into some darkness and to some selfish gurus, grossness.
I don't want to hear that because we don't like hearing people talk like this is what you should do, or like no, I don't want to. Yeah,
but it's also it's been bastardized in that way because it's just easy for people to say and look at people doing yoga and just assume that because they're doing it, they adopt all the values of those crazies, right?
Yeah.
Or those people that have like been more like identified with like cults or whatever. Yeah. But it's like it's a movement progression, but it is in a sense for me. I've noticed it's prayer. Yeah. When I'm doing yoga, it's 100% of time for me to connect to God and to get myself out of the way to connect with God. So that means a bunch of times where I'm in this spot and that inner thing, that discomfort starts settling in and my breath is starting to get, and I got to release it all and got to find a way to breathe under tension.
For sure.
Okay, settle, calm yourself down. Yeah. All right, calm down. And then you go deeper and you're like, oh, it doesn't hurt. Yeah. It's actually, that was my holding that was hurting. So now that I'm like, oh, it feels okay. I'm good. And I can exist here for a couple seconds, and then you do something else. And then you're going through this full spectrum of motion that's essentially bringing your body through, in your joints, through a full range of motion, and you're getting fluids moving, you're getting the synovial fluids moving, all this good stuff. But it's a maintenance of that. We can't sit where we can't be in shapes and expect our bodies not to start to mirror those shapes. And so we're meant for motion, not be forms in a sense. But when we spend time in these forms and we don't express ourselves fully, it's pretty simple, right? And if people do that preventatively, most people that have a practice of any kind that they just show up to I always say twice a week I did yoga twice a week for probably 6 years.
Yeah.
And I haven't recently, but now it's evolved into our practice. So I still train every day, and it's all infused with yoga in motion, not as many holds and binds and things of that nature. But it's all a part of a thing, right?
Yeah.
And so I feel like we all just need to have something that we're committed to showing up to. And if you'll notice, the same people that get in the cold and hot, just watch what their bodies innately do without even saying anything. They'll naturally start stretching and moving and doing stuff and expressing themselves in those ways. And you think about like let's say you have a certain emotional experience. There's a posture that we all can see that match that emotional experience. In fact, there's even a place in your body that you can actually associate in your gut and your heart and your body associate with those emotions as well. Mm-hmm. And they could even heat map and show that you experience certain emotions in different aspects of your body. Well, that's internally, but no, it's like we see these things. We read nonverbal communications and micro expressions, and everybody's tuned to hear and see all these things, and they just don't even know half the time. But I feel like understanding those things from a deeper level, you're going to get a lot farther in how you respond to most people's medical conditions are literally them responding poorly to things that they're experiencing internally, and then them giving the authority to other people to help decide what's going on inside of them. Mm-hmm. And once we think about the way our bodies and our emotions and are all interfaced, and now as soon as I feel this thing, and now I'm having a doctor that's totally thinking about this from a very specialized point of view that is not connected to any of the stuff we're talking about. And now you're giving them full authority to tell you how you should feel about your body and the state of dysfunction or disease that you have. Because their first objective is to label you with a diagnosis code, a disease, a label that you are now going to pull in and identify with. And so now you get trapped in this now you're a part of their game.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
You've given them the authority to play it, and you're a pawn.
Yeah.
And that's our system, and that's most people, unfortunately.
Yeah. Same thing can happen on the mental side too. I mean, I'm not, I can get trapped into these diagnoses. There's a place for it. I mean, I do believe that. But I think, in some of these natural, modalities, through hot and cold and salt, it's like let's give these a try. Let's give these a try first. I mean, one of my most favorite facts is like that we have 60,000 miles of blood vessels in our body. Like 60,000 miles. That's 2 times around the earth. And so like whether it's yoga,
your lungs have the surface area of a tennis court.
Insane. So like whether it's walking or yoga or running or like whatever it is that we can increase oxygen and blood flow through 60,000, then it like a lot of places they'll boast like these laundry list of benefits, all of these, it's good for metabolism, it's good for immunity, it's good for this. And it's like, well why? And the big why is like, it's not just saunas, just cold plunges. It's like, that's in my opinion, one of the best ways. And like, you have to just sit there, with like anything we can do to like microdose our movement patterns or do anything to get, outside of, so if I'm walking 5,000 steps and just going about my day, whatever I can do to increase that oxygen and blood flow is going to like see some pretty exponential benefits from a cardiovascular, benefit all the way down to your muscular system and your mental clarity. It's like, holy crap, that makes a lot of sense.
That's right. And there's always breakthrough moments. I was trying to get this earlier, but I got off track. But working with the fighters and doing a lot of this weird stuff. So like being in there, so like you get in the sweat tent, for instance, 120 degrees, or you get into a sauna that's really hot. At first, it's like, oh, this is warm. If it's comfortable, and it's like it feels great. And you're actually, most of the time, you're still in your head, and you're actually still brought in whatever in your head with you. You're just in a warmer environment. And you get to a point where you're not really thinking about your breathing. You're still in your thoughts. You're not really tuned in your body that much. And then a couple minutes in, you're like, oh, you perceive like,
Yeah.
I'm hot. Like, you're like, wow, I'm sweating. And you're like, I'm a little uncomfortable now. That's
Heart
weird.
rates are,
And so now you're in this battle where you're like, wow. And you finally notice that you're not breathing well. You're kind of in your thoughts. And when you're thinking, you're not really tuned into the full, efficient pattern of breathing.
Sure.
And then you're like, oh, shit, I'm not breathing. So you're like, I probably need to do that. And you'll start kind of focusing on breathing. And at first, there's a little resistance and then coordination. And you're like, go full. And it's a little shaky. You're like, whoa. So it's like this resistance because your mind is now, you kind of slowly, intuitively start to identify that you have to focus on your body right now because you're really hot. But what it is your brain's kind of telling you, because ventilation is a big part of thermal regulation. And so when you're breathing in a proper way, especially through your nose, and you're releasing the heat, like hot,
Yeah.
right? Cool, hot. And you're doing that well, you can really stay cool for longer and get comfortable even after you're kind of a little uncomfortable. But, and this is stuff you kind of learn over time if you just did it and you said, I'm going to do it for 10 minutes. Well, some of getting through that last couple minutes, you're like, shit, I need to, and what happens is your mind quiets.
You're nailed
Eventually,
it.
your mind's like, okay, stop wasting energy on this because
gotta
you're not
breathe.
going to make it the next 10 minutes. Okay, so focus on this. And all of a sudden you start emptying. And then before you know it, you're actually clear and you're not thinking because you had to go into your body just to endure this little time period. And then you get out, and in the meantime, your body's releasing whenever you had that perceived discomfort, your body's releasing heat shock proteins.
Mm-hmm.
It's releasing a little bit of adrenaline, a little bit of dopamine, a little bit of serotonin, a little bit of norepinephrine.
Yep.
It's going and dosing out all this stuff in boluses. And that's a part of why you start feeling a little more comfortable and you're able to, you go through these kind of waves of discomfort and then kind of sorting yourself out. But it's natural. And if a person's left to their own devices in that setting with the right intentions, they're going to they're going to get better. They're going to improve and they're going to have massive gains in their presence of mind, in their confidence of who they are and what they're adding to an environment. And it's all builds off itself, right?
Yeah.
And to know we're not having because a lot of imposter syndrome and stuff like that people struggle with, it's disassociating the labels and all these other things. And it's like hard to be yourself when you're trying to be what they want you to be. And it's natural. And it starts from when we were kids getting coached and us trying to be validated by people. And
I'm the fastest kid on the playground.
Yeah.
Man, I got the light up shoes. I can
natural.
run faster this time, And
Right.
it's like you want to be seen, heard, and important.
It's
like
natural,
the
man.
things every human wants.
That's
right?
right.
Like from a little age to all the way up.
But now you're 30.
Yeah.
You can't do it anymore. It's you that validation will kill you.
It gets exhausting.
It's exhausting.
It just gets absolutely. Sometimes just it's absolutely exhausting.
Right.
I do think I mentioned this, but a lot of people will come rushing into our saunas and stuff, and then from their lives, and it'll be that stillness that
Mm-hmm.
really hits, and
Right.
it's kind of like, whoa, I haven't
Right.
sat still in a quiet room in maybe years for some
Yeah.
people, maybe, or for maybe weeks, maybe days or something, and then all of a sudden, you just said it beautifully. Then that whole process starts. And I won't even try to repeat it, but you did a perfect job of it. That whole process starts, and then in that breathing, I mean, and we're just like tricking the body, if you will,
To find itself
through hot air and cold and salt and stillness and
what
breathing.
does the cold
and breathing.
do? What does the cold do?
Yeah.
It's okay. Here's the cold experience, right? All right.
Give me the.
I'll
other,
give you the POV.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
So POV of the cold, right? All right. You're there, and you've got all this anxiety and this anticipation, and it almost forces your monkey mind to go a little bit nuts. You're just like, oh my god, and I'm talking about from a point of view where you're not experienced in doing it, right? Or even once you've had a little experience, but maybe you've been away from it for a little while, and it's like, all right, and so you could build up all this anticipation. All that changes, for me now, is I just don't let myself think about it.
Yeah.
I'm just like, all right, everything I'm doing before I get in that cold, it's like, it's not important. And before that, it's like your threat detection brain is just going overdrive. It's just because of the visceral nature of the cold. What does the cold do? it's a reflex. Just like if I hit your tendon with a hammer, your foot's gonna jump, right? There's nothing you could do about that. Just like if a loud noise just went off right now, me and you are both going to do like
For
this.
sure. Yeah.
All humans, it's a startle reflex. Yeah. It's a natural reflexive thing we all do. Can't help it. So when you hit that cold, it triggers these reflexes that cause you to
pretty good job,
right? Like it's so it forces you to notice your breathing and to notice how your breathing is being affected by this thing, and you don't have a lot of control over it initially. And then all you're doing is trying to gain some control of that reflexive response, that hyperventilation, the freezing and the tension in the body that you can't. And now you're just, you're trying to let it go, let it go, let it go. Okay. Okay, I'm here. I'm calm. I'm present. And I'm more present than I've ever been.
Yeah.
Because everything I was thinking is eliminated. If you were thinking about your wife saying something to you before you walked out the door and you're still a little bitter, and it's just like, that's hard to shake some of that stuff. As soon as you hit that cold, it's gone.
It's gone.
Everything's gone because your brain, your body is shunting and dedicating all resources to survival now in this moment. And it's safe, totally safe, totally hasn't. I don't know one person that's died or had a negative response to the cold. And I've dealt with a lot of people with even severe health conditions that respond beautifully. Humans are generally very durable creatures. Yeah. They're not, and you got to break down that sensitivity, right? And that's a part of how you do it. And then the beautiful part of it all, anybody can do something for 30 seconds. Everybody can do it. I don't care who you are. Anybody that says, I can't do this, or I'm not a cold person, or da-da-da. If you're telling me you can't do anything for 30 seconds, you're lying. Yeah. My son, when he was 8 years old, did 16 minutes in 44-degree water. Yeah. Behind us, he said, Dad, what's the longest you've ever done? I said, I don't. So maybe 15 minutes. And that's what we used to do. Like, that's how we started. Yeah. And we did that for a lot. Yeah. Well, he did 16. Yeah. He's like, all right, well, I'll do 16. I'm going to do one more than you.
Yeah.
He was 8.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can. I mean, like that. I think, a lot of these big feats that some people do of like 100 marathons in 100 days, or like, all of these, you'll hear of these crazy things. And like a lot of them say, if you talk to them, they're like, I'm just doing this to show. And the guy that did 100, I think he did did 2 more. It's like, I'm just showing y'all that, like, what's possible, or a Wim Hof or something like that. They found that, and they're not doing it.
And they're saying, I'm not special either. You could do it too.
Most of their messages are, I'm no different than you.
That's right.
I just want to show that. So like the cold is like I've talked to you about, I had a couple aunts that, or aunts and uncles, and we're all out of family function and doing a cold plunge. And one of them says, oh, I'm not a cold water person. I'd never do that. Well, someone gets in and does, one of my nieces, 16-year-old niece does it. She does it for 3 minutes. And then now the aunt's like, well, I mean, if she did it, then I could do it. And then she gets in, and now they're like cold plunge warriors. They've showed up to every one of our events, done all the cold plunges.
That's right.
And I heard them say, I'm not a cold person. I can't do it.
That's right.
And then now also watch through the power of community, really, and like seeing someone else do it, or competitive nature, or whatever, there's a lot of different things. Like now they can. And so the next time they say, I can't do something.
That's right. I'm lying to myself.
Well, I said I couldn't do that, and I did it. So now I can't use that as an excuse.
Those are habitual labels. We don't know. Most people that say that don't even realize they're not being totally honest. Yeah. And even people that really prioritize integrity, that are like, really, integrity is very important. And it is. And you could tell they value that, and they're a good person.
They believe,
and they're great people. Yeah. But then they can say words sometimes and habitually, unknowingly being dishonest. And I think that's something that we all should be very careful about. If I say I can't do something, I really think, is that true? And if I say I'm not that kind of person, well, are you sure? Do you know? And I think not to say that, like, not to challenge your identity.
Like if you don't want to do it, you say you don't want to do it. Like, I mean, that's.
But no, too, you saying that, you're claiming that as an identity.
Like, I can't.
And that's dangerous. Yeah. And I think all people should be very wary of their language, and the fact that they could be unknowingly programming. in disabling themselves in something that seems very innocuous and very just in like it can get breezed right over. And I think that's what I was telling you the other day about like something about when you have a child that's learning language, and you know you're responsible for teaching them language and the way that they understand the world. You know, the coding they're using to really frame and understand the world. It makes you really think about it. You have to, because you're like, oh shit, this is important.
Yeah.
And so I think that is important for all people, especially young guys and people that don't have kids yet, to be really relentless with your self-talk and what you say, and then be okay with if somebody calls you out. Because I think the people that call you out on your speech, and not in a way to say like, to try to like make you look stupid or try to make themselves look better, but in a way to say like, hey, just question your words a little bit and just think about it and be willing to be like, you know what? Yeah, I need to change that word because it's not helping me much, you know, and those labels can really do something, just like diagnoses can destroy, you know. Labels can be the biggest limitations that we can place on ourselves. And I think I'm committed to being, that's the one time where I don't really have too big of an issue calling certain people out on those words, especially people I'm working with, because I know if they can't fix those words, it doesn't matter what I do with them. They're going to continue to be they're going to continue to self-destruct in other ways. And I have to confront that. Yeah. That's a part of what I got to do, but doing it in a way that's doesn't sting as much or doesn't seem condescending or stuff like that. That is important. You know?
And we tell a lot of us have an I can't story, and then we did, and that's where we learned this I can't versus I can. And so and there's lots of stories of people that are overcoming incredible things that are against them, you know, and have talked about like, well, I used to not think I can't, you know, and we get extreme examples of a Goggins that was overweight and went or a Rich Roll that was in his, you know, addiction and came out, and like some of those that are very vocal, but it's like, there's people and like hiking the trails, like people I never thought would finish. And like all of a sudden a month later, I'm like, holy shit, how did you do this? I judged you. And you're like, you're killing it. And, you know,
people
like,
are different.
People like they can do it. And so like, if more, I can almost tell my stories of like, I didn't think I could, and I did, or like be vulnerable enough to say like, man, life sucked, and I really was bad on myself, and like coming out of that. And so it's like the more we can kind of like, I think like how we can connect with that is like, no different than you. I still think I can't sometimes, and like, you know, I've had some experiences that have told me that when I do say that, and now I won't listen to it.
Yeah, as much, because the thing is, those internal things will always happen.
They're always
and just like even my pastor talks about like your thoughts aren't sins, because it's how you react to your thoughts, right? So like you're still human, right? There's still going to be urges, and there's still going to be things that are like those primitive urges and things that like we talked about earlier. But the most important part is like you have the awareness to respond and observe in a way where you can, you know, that's not you. You disassociate, and you're not, because what happens is shame and guilt are the prisons, right? And so where people live in shame and guilt is that they have a negative thought, or they think of something that doesn't fit the mold that they're trying to create, and but they can't own it, because it's like because they feel like by owning it and being real with themselves about it, they are saying, they're like, that's me now, like you know, like the preacher or somebody that is walking around town and sees a beautiful woman, and it's like, well, okay, like it's there, and you're still human. You can still be like, wow, she's attractive, but it's like, well, what do you go from there? Do you allow yourself to continue down that path of like, oh, like, whoa, like, oh, like I wonder about this, or like now going into this like fantasy thing and da. Or are you the type that's just like, okay, I can acknowledge somebody's beauty, and then move on with your life, like, and not let yourself go into a path of destructive thinking where you start to indulge.
Because then that's going to build, and you're going to keep having that.
100%.
Because you're not going to not see another beautiful woman, and so like cater to that. The next time it's going to be stronger, and the next time it's going to be stronger.
You're building a pathway to lead you farther and farther down a place you don't want to be. And I think that the mindfulness practices, and ultimately going back to everything we've talked about comes down to the breath, right?
I couldn't agree more.
All these things are putting you in a position to be more intimate and understanding and experiencing your breathing. And what I've learned, if you really broke it down to the reality of human health, right? Your nervous system cares more about your getting oxygen to and through your body than anything else. Why? Because stop breathing if you don't believe me, and just watch what you have no control. Your body is saying like breathe, like it's making you do it. Even people that are unconscious go into they go into these, like their bodies goes into this reflexive thing of just breathing and getting air in really quickly, right? If you ever watch somebody get knocked out, it's like they're snoring.
Right.
It's like your reflex is to just draw oxygen into that system and get the blood back into the brain and the body. And so that's kind of what your body really cares about, especially the autonomic body, the body that is just there, and the parts of us that are working regardless of whether we're conscious of it or not. But we feel like our perceived world and reality and experience separate from the body. We have way too much confidence in it. And the way I look at it is that the more you realize these three perspectives of and not only that, your spirit, if you look in the Bible, the breath is God, right? The breath is life, right? And so you think about the breathing as your connection to God, because in a way, that's when you have your deep intuitive moments, is when you're connected to your breath and your body. And then now you become a conduit or a funnel that can now receive some intuitive information and connect on a spiritual level, right? And even in singing, worshiping, right? It's forcing you to breathe, right? It's forcing, because you're singing, so it's like, in a sense, it's all connected to oxygenation of the body. But not to get too off track, that's the primary concern of your body. So the diaphragm and the pelvic floor are your primary breathing mechanisms. People don't think of the pelvic floor as breathing. They think of breathing as your diaphragm and your ribs and your thorax. But the thing is, if your pelvic floor doesn't drop and you decompress the organs in a sense, then the diaphragm can't drop. Right. Yeah. So a part of the pelvic floor dropping and settling and the body extending a bit is also a part of how we get full efficient lung capacity. Yeah. And when you blow air out of your body, the pelvis should naturally, if you really blow air out, the pelvis will naturally posteriorly tilt, the front of the body will contract, the back of the body can extend. And so it turns into like an accordion. Right. Yeah. The bottom ribs and the pelvic floor, and that connection, that's the root of most health dysfunction and physical health derangements that I see. You can go farther to say that dysfunction leads to a lack of fluid propulsion throughout the entire body, because that's the primary pump. Yeah. So the lymphatic system, the venous blood system, is a low pressure system. The lymphatic system has no pressurization. It doesn't have a heart behind it. It's driven by this. People used to always say it's driven by this local muscle action, which it is. This central mechanism is what creates the negative pressurization, the draw. It's the pump. So the ribs flare, pelvis drops, the ribs drop, pelvis lifts. Yeah. And that compression and decompression in your abdomen is the source of everything. I mean, it's not just about the fluid mobilization. It's about the efficiency of respiration, oxygen perfusion into the body. It's the thing that needs to be prioritized and focused on more than anything. Some of these modalities, people can stumble into it, but if you watch their body's reactions, you'll see they're getting more extension and taller and more expanded on their inhale. And the part most people are missing, because they're stuck at the top of an inhale. So it's like a lot of people you see with unstabilized cores and weak pelvic floors, they're actually just like a person took a huge breath and they let out a little air and they go back up. So they're going 100 to 70, back to 100 to 70. But they don't have the capacity to compress from 70 down to like 10%, right? Because once you get past 50%, you actually notice the muscles that pull your lower ribs down engage.
Yep.
And then, so if you're not practicing force expulsion, you're never narrowing your body past neutral, giving it a rebound tension that wants to go out. So once I blow all the air out, now when I relax, the body passively fills with air.
Yeah.
So most of the time, that other person, they're they're already at the top. They blow out a little, and they're actively inhaling. So they're fighting to expand their body. At the same time, they're trying to get life force, oxygen, inhalation, energy. So they're teaching their body to fight as air comes in. Versus if I blow all the air out, when I relax, air just filled my body, and I didn't even try to pull air in.
Right.
I just relaxed, and my ribs expanding back out, and my diaphragm being able to open, right? Drew it right in. So you're switching the cycle of autonomic regulation, and you're using an active pattern of force expulsion, which is getting all the way from your tailbone. If you notice, the last thing that happens when you blow all the air out of your body is a Kegel. If you really want to get the last ounce of air out, that's how you get it.
Yeah.
Squeeze, and that'll get a little more air out. And then when you relax, everything unlocks. And so you're connecting everything in this anterior deep front line, right? All the stuff that really controls and draws in the front of the body. That by itself is the first step for most people's issue. And why? Because we're actually rotational creatures, right? But now think of your spine with all these curvatures, right?
Yeah.
And so now when I'm stuck in this extension, I'm taking this curvature in my lower back and I'm making it a big one, right? Because I'm really extended back. And my pelvis is all this distension. So when I'm engaging, I'm actually flattening that curve. So when I'm blowing the air out, I'm actually straightening the spinal curvature. So now think about that and think about rotation. So think about a car axle if it was really bent.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
That would suck.
Yeah.
Now think about you're straightening that axle out.
Yeah.
And now when you rotate, you actually have a more pure rotational axis. So you're not cramming and grinding and forcing things where they don't belong. So this frontal plane thing that's tied to the way we breathe, and it's also tied to the way we connect the front of our body, it's also tied to the way we regulate our autonomic nervous system. So this same person that's stuck here, that's not efficiently exchanging oxygen, well, throughout the day, their body is signaling a problem.
Yeah.
So by the time they get to the day, their cortisol levels are shot through the roof, and the lack of connection to their whole core is kind of the central thing that their body's wanting but not getting. And so it's tied to the fact that they're in a panic response. Because by the end of the day, they've inefficiently oxygenated all day long. Yeah. Their brain's slowly starving of oxygen, and they don't know why. They feel like they want to crawl their own skin by the end of the day.
I've felt this. I've felt exactly what you're talking about. I mean, exactly. I mean, whenever, especially my son was through 5, 6 months, 7 months, and we're building this business, I was having panic attacks. I mean, I can even talk about all this stuff and still, I was having 4 or 5 o'clock during the day. I'd get home. I mean, I'm talking about like straight up panic attacks, can't breathe because I'd just be holding the breath all day long. And I think you wrapping it around to the breath, it is hands down, all of our services type of thing are geared around, these are just getting you to focus on your breath. You don't have a choice to be able to stay in the heat, stay in the cold, be in the salt room. You have to breathe. And one thing I want to mention is during these panic attacks, I had a dream one night. And I'm telling you, this is one of the wildest things. I had a dream, and a man was giving me a hug, and I felt calm, and I looked up, and it was my pawpaw, who's 96, towards the end of his life. And he says, and I can just feel it just now. He says, "It's going to be okay, son. Just breathe." And I mean, it was like my pawpaw, but God, or something, type of thing. I label him as my pawpaw. That's who it was in the dream. You can call it.
It's love energy.
And I mean, in the message, and this was in my dream. This wasn't during a panic attack. This was a dream later that, after, it's going to be okay, son. Just breathe. And when now that dream is real, dreams are real when we reflect on them in our day. And so now whenever that happens and I can hear that voice, that dream is just as real as anything else, you know.
could even feel it.
And I can feel it.
Yeah.
I can feel that dream. And so like I feel what you're talking about. Like I can get away from like, you know, these practices or these breathing, and then it's like feel that. And then what I have through that experience then said like breathe.
Yeah.
Now
And, you know,
stop
we can
and
get
breathe.
real weird, and,
You know.
and I don't care. We're getting weird anyway.
Yeah, let's get weird.
So think about where you experience anxiety. Which part of your body? Where do you feel it?
I mean, probably, yeah, in the chest. Yeah.
And where else?
Yeah. And
Maybe in your gut.
it's all through here. It's like when I'll say like, oh, I just feel like I even was having this tight like feeling up through here. I mean,
Your
like aching.
heart,
I'm talking about like I know, and I would hold my heart
That's
like
your
this.
heart,
I would literally just like
It's your heart. Like it feels like it's tight.
I'd go like this, and the baby would start crying, you know, and like I'd already had a stressful day of, you know, and all of a sudden
the
I'm
baby's
going,
picking up all that.
and he's and so and when I talking about like earlier in this talk like about trying to get his seatbelt on, and I'm like wanting to like scream. I'm like really wanting to scream, and like I'll have all these games I play of like he just needs a safe place, or like the baby just needs a safe place, or the dream I had, and like only it's like that the whole thing of like trying to find some calmness in that chaos, you know, type of deal. Whether that's like, all right, I need to step away and I need to breathe. Like I need some stillness. I need some solitude. I need something, you know, like or just a breath. Maybe like, you know, my girlfriend will say this. We talked about like how long does it like, let's say I'm living the good life, doing everything right, and I get off my path, you know, and like all of a sudden I go back to like, let's just say whatever it is, a different way of life that's not in line with my values. We were talking recently, how long does it take you to get back? So like, let's say I don't use drugs for a long time and then I do, and then like, oh, I don't want to do it, I'm coming back. Like for our consciousness, like how long does it take to get back to where I was in living a value-centered good life? And she caught me off guard. We were having this conversation, and she goes, is it just one breath?
Yeah, it is.
It's like, whoa, like I can make up that. Like, I mean, of course, our level. If you do something, you know, our whole wiring will change and this and that. I was like, but it can be one breath.
She's right.
And
it's a reset, right? So it doesn't matter what the reset is, but we're given this opportunity because the breath it's tension, relaxation, and everything has to move through these propulsive cycles to break the stuckness, right? Yeah. It's a part of, remember, everything, disease and that goes wrong with us, thinking body, it's all stuck. Something's stuck.
The blockage.
Something's blocked, something's stuck. So when we feel emotional discomfort, it's normally for people, they feel it in their gut and their chest. So what do you do when you touch a hot stove? Yeah. You withdraw. So what happens when you feel discomfort in the body? Subconsciously, if you're not using the breath and the awareness and these other things, you disassociate with the fact that you're withdrawing. Your body's pulling away from the thing that's uncomfortable. And so in some capacities, we stop accessing the portions of our body that are sensitive or that feel, my gut hurts. Like if you ever get like a stomach virus or you get really like a gut thing thrown up or something, diarrhea, you always want to make space. So you kind of like lean back and you want to decompress all this. Yeah. And so because if you come forward and you actually engage, it's like, ooh. But when it comes to most of this, the best method to calm that hug your grandpa gave you in the dream, right? Or if you notice the deep pressure, how like weighted blankets and stuff like that make people feel better. And just like you wrap a baby up in a little ball like this inside the womb, in a sense, right? So in a sense, it's like ways that we unconsciously are soothing, comforting in the way we react to these emotional and physical or spiritual stresses. It's reflecting itself in our body. It is. And we just don't acknowledge it, but it is. And so some of that, though, we need to create some compression, like this area that we keep running from, it needs a hug, right? So your body needs to be able to compress that area a bit. And the best way to do that, the most gentle and pacifying way that your body's really, what it's looking for a connection for the diaphragm to the pelvic floor. Because the longer that connection gets, by nature, that's important. Your body knows it, whether we know it or not. And the farther apart these things get, it actually perpetuates all these issues, makes them worse, and they get built. And it's like, so the first step is the breath, and now I have to put some compression, just like a little hug, right? But I'm not going to hold you forever. It's like you're holding a bird.
Yeah.
You squeeze it too hard, all of a sudden it starts freaking out, right? You don't want to do that. And now let it go.
Yeah.
And now let it go. And it's cycles, propulsive cycles of pressure and depressure. Pressure, depressure. We were given this.
Yeah.
This is the sun comes up, the sun goes down. Tomorrow will always be another day.
Yeah.
Get another chance. Some days are horrible. Some days nothing goes right. But guess what? It feels like this is like my world is this now. And then you go to sleep and you wake up next morning, you're like, I feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
I'm a bit better, right?
Yeah.
But now think about the breath. It's just you taking that cycle of, and you're just putting it where now every moment we can actually produce this new cycle. And it always begins with just a conscious action of a reset.
Yeah.
You have to revive, and then you can thrive.
You nailed it. And that like, and I don't talk to a lot of people about like a personal mission of revive and thrive, or a personal that's deep to me is exactly, because when I talk about a way of life,
Person's not breathing. I have to.
The revive and thrive is like, it's like the revive and thrive is like from the minute we wake up to the minute we go to bed. It's like that those things are going to come up, and that I've got to be aware of them, and I've got to revive.
If you're unconscious, what do you have to do? You got to revive. You got to put the paddles on them.
Yeah,
you know?
and there's going to be times in our day where we need to revive, and then we need to thrive, and so so it is that back and forth. It's that ebb and flow. We can't just like go all the time till we then have a panic attack, and then we drop dead from a heart attack. It's like that doesn't work. So it's like I also can't go and then do nothing. It's like, so for each person it'll look a little differently, but the mission, or like that way of life, is like, all right, I got this day ahead of me, and it's going to go in different directions, and how can I find that kind of middle ground amongst the chaos? How can, like, I have a baby crying, I can't get the car seat under, and then I also have 5 things in the to-do list in my head. How can I like set back and all that be true, and then glide? How can I get into that flow without all these things being tigers coming at me? They're not. They're made up. I'm making that up. I'm letting that, through a lack of breathing, I'm letting those things trigger me like that, and it can be a whole lot of suffering. And so if I can't, I have got to be able to look at that and go, all right, this is on me. This is on me to do something differently. It's on me now to, like, all right, if I can step back and breathe, if I can step back, go get in a sauna for some time, or get in a cold plunge, or getting, whatever it is, or do some exercise. So then next time that I'm in that same situation, I can recognize it and then say, hey, little buddy, let me get that car seat out. How nice to see you. Good. And then that's the growth. That's the growth right there. Right. It's not that, because he's going to keep getting older. He's going to be in car seats. He's actually going to be more of a pain in the ass at times. Like, there's going to be 10 things on the to-do list, and there's going to be a death in the family. There's those things. There's going to those things aren't going to stop, and so it's on me to find the flow
and find a way to react to the same thing in a way that actually you feel that you see and experience the same thing, but you don't have this negative emotional response. You just see it for what it is. It's like, oh, he's just a baby, and this is just part of life. And actually, this ain't going to last very long. And man, like, I need to really pay attention right now. And this same thing where he's crying and upset, you're just like, oh, well, And then all of a sudden you pick him up and you're not carrying all that energy, and he just calms down. Yeah. And you go about your day and have this good moment. Yeah. And it's like, you're like, wow, like it all started with me.
And the energy's got to go somewhere, and it's going to go into the baby. It's going to go into, my girlfriend. It's going to go into my parents. It's going to start with me, like what you're saying. And on the other flip side, if that energy's calm, that's also going to the example I use sometimes is like, if I'm extremely calm, or let's just say I'm in like a very, very good place, and Robby, you were to come say, F you, Austin. Yeah. I'd say, hey man, everything okay? Anything I can do for you? But if I'm if I'm uptight and I'm stressful, and you come up and you say "F you, Austin," I'm gonna say
F
"Fuck
you too."
man." You know, like,
Yeah.
You want to go?
That's
like,
right.
You want to go? I need somebody to play.
That's
You know,
right. I
like-
was waiting
like,
for
I was,
something.
yeah. I'm glad you did. And so you didn't do anything differently. And in the two situations, I could like show compassion because I'm in a calm place, or humility, and say like, I'm struggling with something too. Let's connect.
right.
Or two, we can both fight each other and like not go any
And
like,
nobody wins.
and nobody wins.
And
it's-
ultimately, the things that are both leading us to feel in that way, they were probably not getting dealt with either.
No, definitely. And that's, we talked about before, like it's on me in, inner purpose versus outer purpose. My inner purpose is that calmness, that like stillness, that like only I can know about, only I can feel the suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And then like the external is like whether I fight you or whether like we have a conversation and connect. But my external is going to come from what I'm doing my inner work with.
That's right.
And
Our only opponent's ourselves.
And it'll keep happening throughout the whole day. Like I notice whenever I'm like it's almost like when I'm in a happy mood, I want everyone to know I'm happy. I want to go out and talk to everybody. You want to go do this. All of a sudden, the person at the gas station's like, "Oh, thank you. Good to see you." Like they're nicer to you and like all these things. And likewise, if I'm in a negative space and I'm like, and then I'm like, "Oh, this person won't hurry up," and this and that. It's like that energy gets returned. Or on the trail towards the end, as I was getting into a better place, I had a lot of people say, "Thank you for your patience," because I wasn't in a hurry anymore, and they were so used to like every customer being in a hurry, and so I'll find myself being in a hurry sometimes in a store, and I'm like trying to reflect back on what that space I was in, and maybe now I'm like I'm not in that space as much, and like all right, and then people know like that person behind the desk at a gas station notices the energy of patience and understanding, and it like we've talked about that goes into that person, and that person's actually thrilled that like, oh, finally I got someone that's not busting my ass trying to hurry me, because that whole hurry thing is we're doing it all to each other.
And you're having compassion for their life and what they're going through, and the fact that they're, a $7 or $8 an hour employee, and a lot of people are treating them like they're servants, and they're treating them like they're lower class and this and that. But the Bible says, you'll be judged by how you treat the lowliest of these, like the meek shall inherit the earth. And it also says a lot about, a rich man's chances of getting to heaven are less than a camel fitting through the eye of a needle. And a lot of it comes down to the dynamics of power. And when we think about power and all these different things, and when you really see the truth of people sometimes is whenever they actually get power, and you find out if they really did the hard work. Did they deal with their insecurities? Did they address their woundedness? Did they take responsibility for their generational curses and say it stops here?
Right.
It stops right here.
Inflection point.
But the thing is, what's unfortunate is sometimes that people acquire power that haven't done that, but they think they have, or maybe they say they have, or they don't, and they get it. And then now you get to see what their true nature is, because they don't have as much accountability. And unfortunately, most of the time what gets revealed is unfortunate. It's not good. And people respond very poorly to getting power because they don't respect themselves enough to know how to truly manage it. They're still chasing it as a commodity for validation.
Yep.
And see, I told you. Yeah. I was going to make it. See, look at me now. Look at me now. Look at my Maserati. Look at that thing. Da, 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 da. And ultimately, they're building a future version of themselves that's a depressed, anxious, and unhappy person, like 100% of the time. And anything that we pursue in that power, material, capitalistic mindset is a source of you fulfilling the American dream while you're also killing yourself, and you're killing your potential and your legacy, which is only who you are, what you do, and how you've changed people's life and perspectives. And so I think it's important for guys like us that are working within the game of the capitalistic society. We're still serving a public that's built in it's still the same thing, but we're trying to change the rules in terms of we don't have to kill ourselves and give ourselves up. In fact, we can thrive, and we can find that we can become things that we didn't even know were possible, and that we can establish and deal with and learn how to confront our own emotions in ways that we didn't even know were possible. And to the extent of like, the Bible says that you should love your enemies. And that's something that I really pondered on the last really 2 to 3 years, because at first it literally, that question just sounded so impossible. Like, I've made a lot of growth and a lot of progress, and I've really felt like I've pushed myself to do a lot of things, but that I don't know if that's like, is that possible? Yeah. And believe it or not, like really pondering that question and combining it in with a lot of these kind of personal growth things, it's like, yeah, it is, dude. It's totally possible, because what happens is, as you really start pushing yourself in that lane, you realize that everything that opposes you is your source of growth. And that even those difficult people that we're talking about that kind of cause those things, it's like sandpaper, right? They're like rough, abrasive. Sometimes it's like people catch you like that, and you're like, well, that's what sandpaper does. It shapes you. It
They're there for a reason.
It softens. It actually softens your rough edges. It all based off of how you decide you're going to interpret it. And your opponent and your capacity to prepare for them is what also is making you stronger, more capable, and resilient, because your preparation for them, in a sense, is what's building you. And so, like, the greater your opponent, the greater you become.
True, yeah.
And your desire and preparation to deal with that, right? And so, and you can go as far as to say in the word enemy itself is kind of, it's everything that we polarize is good or bad, or we have we create this bipartisan or this partisan situation, Republican and Democrat, whatever. It's all bull. Light, and even the thing, like, it all comes down to like light, dark, black, white, on, off, wrong, right? Yeah, like we have these simple binary ways of understanding the world, but the reality is that those labels, again, can be traps, but nothing is one thing or the other. It's always a spectrum, right? And so, yeah, the light can be on, and you say, oh, the light, or the light can be off and it's dark, but also it can kind of be a little bit on. It can be like just barely on, right? Like, so there's so many spectrums of how we experience the world, but the way we try to interpret it is not the same. And it's the same thing with the way we deal, like I was talking about, with posture and movement. Everything we do to condition and think about our health and life should be based off of movement, because we're not forms. So, but we train to be a form. So we train with our spine in the middle and all those machines and everything. It's getting us to where we're like learning to move disassociated from the spine itself. In reality, when we move, the spine's always rotating and turning. One foot's always in front of the other. You're always in some form of imbalanced position, and your spine always has movement that it needs to provide us along the way.
Right.
And that's the way all of our training should model that, And sometimes it's as simple as just splitting your feet and moving with one arm instead of two arms or whatever. But I think the changes in the dynamics that we can start to alter and learn, and how we're spending our time and conditioning our bodies, it's not about really reinventing the wheel. It's just about looking back at the way we're actually built and are we intended to do? What are our bodies typically designed to do, and what does our life look like? And then how do we find a way to like bridge this gap? And a lot of our exposure to nature and what you're providing is in a modern life, in places where people are working under fluorescent lights and they are working behind computers, and that's a big part of how we're making a living and how we're feeding our families and providing and living. It's like, that's fine in some regards. Totally. Like, hey, that's a noble cause, and you're taking care of your business and you're doing the right thing for your family and you're providing this and that. But do not miss out on the fact that if we can't maintain ourselves, then we can't fill our cup up to give back to our families, to give back to our kids. When we're present with our kids, and we could be a strong, resilient, capable person that is actually taking care of ourselves, that's the model that they'll become. They're going to follow our lead, and they're going to chase the things that they see us chasing. And so by accessing things like this, and if I can go spend, let's say, half my lunch break going and 3 days a week into Revive and Thrive, and all of a sudden I'm finding these emotions and feelings and dopamine and serotonin, and I'm finding oxygen, and I go back to work, and all of a sudden, like, I'm on fire, and I'm enjoying what I'm doing a little bit compared to yesterday. And now it's like, there's more to life. Yeah. There's more to life. And it doesn't have to be like, I don't have to escape, because because that's what I'm trying to get to, is the escape mentality. Because even with people that are going to utilize your service, everybody's going to say at some point when they have some of these experiences where they're like, they'll go back into life and they're having trouble integrating these experiences into their actual life. And then all of a sudden they're like, you ask them, like, well, what are you looking for? And they'll say, man, I just want peace. Yeah. I just want peace. And it's like, okay, so what does that look like for you? I don't know, like, just sitting in nature and meditating, and, and just being able to, like, not have kids crying and this happening and this. And I was like, okay, so that's what's going to fulfill you and make you happy? Like, that's what you need? And it's like, yeah, that's what I need. All right, well, what then? Yeah. So let's say now you snap your fingers and you have unlimited access to just sit in the woods and now your kids are gone, now your wife, now you're by yourself. Now what? Are you still happy? No. The reality is, now you're going to miss your kids. You're going to miss their connection. You're going to miss your wife. You're going to miss your life. You're going to miss your friends at work. You're going to miss so you're just lost in your perspective, and you just need something to shake it up and to snap you out of it every now and then, so you stop feeling so sorry for yourself. Yeah. And you could start thinking about other people, because as long as we're thinking about ourselves, we're not happy with that. Yeah. And and that's telling us something. That's God's way of speaking to us and showing, look, when you put your energy into other people, that's feeding our kingdom. That's actually speaking to the bigger purpose of what you're here for. Yeah. And whenever you're so focused on yourself and your sorrows and your pain and your discomfort and you're this and I don't have this and da-da-da, and they have that and they did this and said this, like, it's just a way for you to justify the hell that you've created for yourself, and to, in a sense, to perpetuate that, and also to potentially now you're without a shadow of a doubt, whether that is generational curses, whether that is crap and labels that you put on yourself, and you got a lot of work to do to unwind some of that, but it doesn't matter, because all you need to do is feel a little bit better. And sometimes all it takes is to have that moment of saying, like, okay, I did this one thing. It took me 3 minutes and I feel so much better. Yep. And now it's just like that first breath. Okay, that feels a little bit better. Now let's just use it as momentum. Yeah. And now let's just keep making some moves, because I know the things I'm seeking to make myself comfortable aren't making me happy. But these things that I'm pursuing and that I'm prioritizing and that I'm inserting into my life, I actually feel like I'm changing and becoming happier. Yeah. Like I'm becoming more content. Actually feel a little gratitude. I'm not just doing a gratitude journal every morning, but not changing nothing else, right? I'm actually changing the actions I'm taking, and now I'm proud of myself. And you being proud of yourself is how you become in love with yourself again. Yeah. You have to show yourself who you are, and you have to do it through challenges and some people can't go to Appalachia and spend 6 months, but they can go on their lunch break and do a 3-minute cold plunge and experience something a little difficult and challenging. And if it makes you anxious, good. Yeah. Great.
Yeah, exactly.
That means that we're in the right lane. Yeah. Just like I was talking about, when you have to push that air out your body and compress that area that's a little sensitive, you're literally confronting you're saying, okay, the body wants this, you're saying no. You're going this way instead. Yeah. And I'm okay. We're going to go together. Ready? Yeah. Right? And it's the same thing. You're re-raising yourself. You're guiding yourself, and you're taking full ownership of yourself in that way that your regret on your deathbed at 90 years old is going to be knowing, when you're sitting there in that chair, I could have done something that could have changed their life. I could have been responsible for myself, and I could have changed this generational curse. I see it all for what it is now. Yeah. I see the pain I've caused. I see the things that I've done that I could have done. I saw the points where I could have said something or put energy into this situation that could have changed the whole trajectory of their life and their kids and their kids and their kids. It means something. Yeah. Fix yourself. Get it right. Fix yourself. Get it right.
Yeah.
Take responsibility for yourself, especially men out there. Do not wait.
No, don't wait. I used to tell myself I'll be the best version of myself when I have kids. I said that for a long time. Like it was like a right of like identity for me to even say that. I was just justifying my own crap. I was scared. I was scared.
I said the same things.
I would say those out loud. Like looking back now, it's like you used to say that out loud to people. Like I used to like say it, you know, and like myself now, I'm like, how did I say? Like, I mean, luckily I got on this journey a little bit before I had a kid, and even still, then I'm like still making improvements type of thing. But it's like, God, I can't believe I said those words. You know? Like,
yeah.
I can't.
Because once you start chasing it and you realize that everything you feared was actually the source of all the things you love.
Stuff. Yeah.
Everything that you love comes from you confronting those fears. You know, and confrontation is something that the word itself implies a negative. Just like people automatically think, confrontation. What? You got a problem? What's up? You know, but everything healthy is confrontation. Everything starts with confrontation. Everything good began with confrontation. It's like every change that you've ever seen happen, the first step was confrontation. But it's not a negative. It's just a matter of saying like, hey, this thing needs to be confronted, and we got to put it out on the table, and now we can deal with it. But it's not a bad thing. And even with our families and our marriages, and the reason a lot of generational curses are families that just sweep things under the rug and they move on.
It's true.
And
they
move
come
on.
back up, and then it's like,
That's right.
It's this pattern type of thing, and it's just, I've seen it.
Because they don't want to confront.
Yeah, it's too uncomfortable to confront it.
But they're wasting 10 times more energy not confronting it than they are confronting it. But it's the same thing internally.
Yeah.
The things that we need to confront, most people know it's kind of there, whether you like it or not, and it surfaces, and you'll have moments where you're like, I need it. But then it's like, sleep, and then move on. You know, I'm an accountant.
Yeah.
You know what?
And then the shame, just like you mentioned, the shame. It's like what I was in for a long time was like a prison of shame.
Mm-hmm.
No one knew about it but me.
Yeah.
It's like I lived in that prison.
Yeah.
Like I'd put on a show, but I lived there, and like it was like I couldn't get honest. I couldn't get honest about anything.
That's right.
It's like it was too uncomfortable to like almost even like release that shame. Like to make that leap.
That's
like
right.
it was like weird looking back on it, like. Dude, the pain of that shame was so much that like I was like scared to like
it's the 4 agreements.
Own my shit, you know.
It's
and
the 4 agreements. It's the simplest recipe for removing shame and guilt from your individual life. It's personal integrity, number 1. It all comes from truth, the truth within yourself, not the truth that the world, even the truth that the world accepts, is not your internal integrity, your personal integrity, the story, what you know is true. And then making no assumptions. Make no assumptions about anybody else until you have all the facts and that you know that you know that you know. And then, and then taking nothing personal, right?
Big one.
So the people that force us to feel like things are personal make everybody feel that way. So when we take things personal, generally speaking, the people that make us feel that way, everybody feels that way they make everyone feel that way.
Yeah.
It's not personal to you, honestly. Even like the people that really know how to stick those daggers deep into your heart, if you really look, they do that to other people. And like if you look around them, everybody that's kind of tolerating them is feeling exactly the same way. It's not personal to you. So you can kind of let that go.
Right.
Yeah, and then always do your best. So it's simple concept of like, hey, you haven't done a lot of podcasts or whatever. Like we've talked a little bit about it, but like you're doing your best. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And I'm doing my best, and we have a intention of like sharing a good message and hopefully creating something that people want to listen to and that may help them or change their lives and maybe promote our own businesses that are all geared towards that. So those 4 rules in reading that book was so profound to me because I've spent my whole life in religious environments, and I've learned a lot about the Bible and religious context, and I've learned a lot about my own paths of learning just about general spirituality and ancient cultures and really opening my mind to really just attaining, acquiring knowledge. And like I said, that doesn't equal wisdom. Some of that, there's wisdom in there. But the wisdom is really more about living your life and starting to integrate that knowledge. And now that's hopefully turning into some wisdom. But that's in you. Nobody sees it, right? But like you said, with the people in the trail that you kind of was like doubted, but they did it, you realize you can't see that from the outside. That you can't see what somebody is until you see what they're capable of and what they're willing to endure, and the fact that they're actually able to complete missions that they set out to complete.
Yeah.
You know, I've been so shocked and surprised by people that post-strokes or elderly people that are like in their 90s and that the world is discounted, and I'll watch them in here and realize like, wow, you're just like me. Like, you still have ambitions and desires, and they still have like sex.
Yeah. Well, that consciousness behind that body is the same as the.
And they'll all tell you, like, I still feel young. I just like my body's getting older, but I still feel.
But we see the body and we judge the body, whether we want to admit it or not.
Right.
We judge that. It's wild how our society looks at elderly folks as like being, there should be the top.
That's right.
They should be the top.
We should be
like, we look at it as babies, and then we go up, and we hit our prime, and then we go down,
Exactly.
and like elderly people are looked at as like less than, and they I think, and I'm guilty of judging from a physical standpoint, and then I'll try to like think about like, holy shit, their consciousness of like they've made it.
That's right.
They've went through more uncomfortable times than or over. I mean, it only makes sense over a period of time.
There's so much to learn, and guess what? They're all so full and ready to share. And believe it or not, I find that they appreciate me most of the time, especially the fact that in our clinic we do. I have the blessing and opportunity to just get to hear stories and wisdom and people to share, and the fact they can see that that me and our staff, they're all like me. They all are just super interested in like they really feel lucky to be able to be for people to give us the place for that, and we truly value that and see that as a gift. Whereas like a lot of places, like it's just like, oh, you're just another. It's like when do I get off? You know, it's like, and they don't see it. You know, like how much you care is really it's what they're getting, but more importantly, it's how genuine this real connection is, this relationship is, and this learning experience between people. And eventually, from what we do, they're giving us gifts because now as we learn these stories, we can apply it to the future people that we haven't even met yet.
It just keeps going and going and going. And
not only that, your job gets easier because you get more intuitive and you start to see like, oh, well, that's just like what happened here. And so that's so cool, man. Like that's a part of like that the blessing you don't even know you'll ever get to see. There'll be conversations you'll have in Revive and Thrive with some people having moments and breakthroughs in different life situations. And you're just going to be like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like this is crazy.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. Because where else could you get that?
Right.
Nowhere.
Yeah.
Unless you're doing what you do with the intentions and the facilities and it's like if you build it, they will come. But watch it, they'll come.
Yeah. I think one of the things I'm most excited about with this business is hearing people's stories. I mean, like and I don't have to, we talk about let the services be the therapy, right? Like we don't have to, I know what these services have done for me. I know the space that I've found in that stillness. I know what I've found in the cold plunges. Like I can talk about benefits and this and that. All I've got to do is like have a place for people to get there and it'll take care of itself. Like those little triggers, like all of what we've talked about, breathing, blood flow, it's like, just get in the cold water, just get in the hot room, get in the salt. Like, it's like, one of the guys that I was like an Appalachian Trail mentor, he said to me, his job was like getting people on the Appalachian Trail. He like trained people to do it and this and that. And he goes, I can't be a therapist. I can't be a doctor. I can't be like all these things that, work through people's problems. He goes, but I know that if I get people onto the Appalachian Trail, the trail will take care of all of that.
That's right.
And so in the sense with this business, it's like, I don't have to be a therapist. I don't have to be a doctor. I don't have to be a guru. I don't have to be I can just be a person and have faith in these services that like, and somehow like market it like, to like, hey, come in here. And once you've done it, I don't like, tell me your story. Tell me your experience. Like I want to
let it exist and narrate itself.
I want to hear your experience versus me telling you what you're going to experience.
That's
like
right.
I kind of know, like, or at least have an idea. Like, but tell me, because I'm going to learn something new with every person that comes in and says, they did this to me. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's amazing. Like,
that's right. Well, people in culture respect visionaries that create like Mark Zuckerberg created Facebook, and then you got like Elon Musk created Tesla and SpaceX, and so like our culture respects intellect. It doesn't really respect intuition, right? And when you're a visionary in the space of empowerment and intuition, and you're in a lane where you're trying to help people identify with those things, you're actually not, by nature, our culture doesn't respect that. Just the American culture in general, it respects intellect. It respects ideas that make money, despite, in fact, if you have an idea that makes a crap load of money that even is harmful to people, people will respect you more than if you have something that's super helpful for people and that's really helping people build intuition, but it's antagonistic to the capitalistic structure. People, even though people will be like, "Oh, that's cool," they still don't respect you.
Yeah.
And so I feel like visionaries like me and you that are on a path and tracked to promote wellness as in ethical wellness and healthcare practices that are empowering people and that are in opposition to the standard system that is broken and harmful, you lose a lot of respect, believe it or not. And it is what it is. Hey, it's not personal, right?
Yeah.
It's nothing. Remember the 4 agreements? It's the truth.
Right.
It just is what it is.
Yeah.
It's just looking at society as it is. But also sometimes I think, I've never really even spoke about this out loud, but I think it might be a good opportunity to just speak on that in itself, because you have to almost kind of accept that for what it is and realize that people will respect you once they've had a problem that you're able to help them with, right? So like, that's okay. But it also means that from the face, we're always going to lose in a capacity. Like, we can't compete with those other industries that have this easy way of connecting and resonating with the public that's addicted to their phones and social media and all, and it's playing into the whole bullshit scheme.
Totally right. Yeah.
So when you represent the other side, you're going to have opponents just because of that.
Yeah.
There'll be people that literally just don't like what we're saying, just because they're so indoctrinated into the cultural stuff and they're so identified with all that stuff that they just assume you're an opponent to them.
Yeah.
Because you're talking against their team or their whatever. And it's like, oh, you're probably an anti-vaxxer and I could throw you in that bubble. And so it's so easy. That's like the most easy thing every human can do is to be dismissive like that, and to throw the baby out with bathwater, and to try to polarize themselves to a group. It's weak. It's weakness. It's actually, it's super weak, and it's built off insecurity and fear, and it's sad.
Yeah.
But the truth is that a lot of people in our lane too, we're too passive about, there's too many like people with hippie vibes that aren't being honest. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, you got strong men, right? Strong men are vulnerable, courageous men, right? But they have the power to destroy, right? They capable, just like I was saying, power, like we could tear this entire setup, and physically we can just fuck, like you said, we could rip each other apart, and like we can just like be like primitive cavemen, right? Or we can transcend everything and have the capacity to do that, but choose not to ever, and choose to be kind, choose to be humble, choose to be good natured, choose to persevere and set an example of truth and dignity and all these wonderful things. But we might have 100 views on this video.
Yeah.
If we were sitting here talking about crazy nonsense and perpetuating cultural standards, we'd get thousands of views.
Right.
Yeah. If we wanted to get into the weirdness and, there's a bridge.
Yeah. There is. The same guy that I was talking about, the trail mentor, one thing, he had some things that just hit with me. And one, sometimes the trail is like a counterculture way of life. There's actually people that like live just on trail, just hiking, stay at places along. And he was kind of a, somewhat of a anti-government kind of person, but or at least was thought of as that way. And one thing he said, he goes, no, it's not the case. He goes, you don't have to fight them. You also don't have to join them either. Mm-hmm. And that one was just a big wake up to me of like, I can have like, I'm not as big of a thing of like anger is justice and this and that. And like, I've got to go fight everything I disagree with or whatever. It's like, sometimes it's like more in harmony for me to like if I'm going to fight anger with anger, like it doesn't really get anywhere. If I'm going to protest something that's they're going to protest back, and then we're just literally just going to spin our wheels getting angry at each other. Like my first priority is to manage that inner purpose, is to manage that. And if that takes like, all right, I don't have to fight them and I don't have to join them, and I'm in touch with my intuition. It's like, that's the most important thing. And then it may come full circle to where then I can meet with those folks that I am opposed to, so to speak. And I can do it in that place and not in like a, you suck kind of place. You should do this. You should do that. It's like it doesn't get anywhere.
No.
I see that with a lot of our climate now. It's like there's no solutions. There's no any let's talk about this. It's just like, I don't like what you're doing and you don't like what I'm doing, and we're just gonna keep doing that.
That's right. But the source of change is, again, sometimes the opportunities we have to actually truly bridge change and change deep stuff like we're talking about is like when we get disrespected or when we get put in that position, like you said earlier, where instead of coming back, you're like, hey, there's something. Can I help you with something, man? And genuinely feeling compassion. And that's where I think, to go full circle as far as like to love your enemy, what happens is you go from eye for an eye, and you realize the drawbacks and why that's not effective, because ultimately you're drinking poison and expecting somebody else to die. Yeah. But then you have the idea that we're talking about where now you feel compassion for forgive them, for they do not know. And I was once one of those. Yeah. Like I used to not know too. Right. And so, I can identify and recognize that and realize that I'm not like, you're no different than me. You just haven't seen what I've seen and know what I know now. Right. And so like that concept of compassion for that person that flips you off on the interstate, it's like, but to truly embrace that is powerful. And like I could tell you right now, I'll say maybe 7 out of 10 times, it doesn't happen very often, because it's funny too, when you're looking for monsters to defeat, you're going to find them.
You're going to find them.
But guess what? A lot of wisdom and people that have done a lot of good living will tell you, it's like when you stop chasing the monsters, they stop existing. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And so it's crazy, because like now, whenever I used to have like road rage and stuff, it's like I'd always confront assholes. Yeah. It's like I was always running across people, and it's like,
everybody's an asshole. The world sucks. The world's going to shit because everyone's in. It's like that's.
It's like I never have those moments anymore. Partially because the random ones that do, if I accidentally like somebody runs by, flip me off or something, like I literally am like, I don't feel anger. Yeah. I'm literally like, first off, I'm like, oops, I probably did something I wasn't aware of, or like whatever. But first off, I'm just like, well, that sucks that they're upset. Yeah. Right. But it ain't gonna come off on me, and I'm not upset at them. Yeah. They're upset with me, but there's nothing I can do about it now. But it's like kind of the same thing. Like I kind of feel sorry for them. I'm like, damn, that sucks that they're giving up like something I did unintentionally. Yeah. Literally is ruining their day. Yeah. It's like they are so upset. That must suck. Yeah. Yeah. I'm just like, I truly feel that way now. I don't feel the desire to be like, let me make you more upset. Yeah, exactly. It's like really like, like, ooh, oh, hey. Sorry, which pisses them off too.
It'll piss. Well, yeah, because I found you want to make someone mad, don't give them an opinion. Or don't react.
Don't give them that reaction.
When we talked about it, don't give it an opinion and see what.
Which in its own right kind of feels good. Because you're like, you didn't give me none of that crap, and somehow you have more of it. Yeah. In a weird way, maybe because it's passive aggressive, but
it's probably a little passive. Yeah. I showed you with my kindness.
Whatever.
I know.
Hey,
at least there's an awareness. Like, hey, all right, I'm doing that.
It's next level. Yeah. Man, well, dude, this has been wonderful, dude. Yeah. This has been so much fun. But I guess we do have to. All good things must come to an end. Yeah. And we'll do this again, man. This is just the beginning. Like, I truly believe in your business and your mission, and I'm behind you 100%. And I'll do everything we can to continue to encourage the access to these wonderful modalities and services, man. And you're the perfect person to lead this ship. I truly think that this is going to be something that's going to become big.
Yeah, I believe that too. I appreciate you helping us out, getting the word out.
Hey, man.
Yeah, thanks, Robby.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And with that, we will sign off. Thank you so much. If you did stay to the end, be sure to like and subscribe to our videos. And a quick shout out to our sponsors, Neo Golf, Neo Fit, and Neo Nutrition. Neo Life, the flagship, the mothership, the building that we're actually in. And thank you all, and we'll see you next time.